Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 294, Makhachev versus Volkanovski 2. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as always, is Keith Shillan, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, brother. How you doing, man? This is a big one. I'm excited. I always get excited. The bigger the fights, the more excited I get. I'm really excited.
Oh, we got a big card to talk about. Before we even get to that, today I went to the Texas Renaissance Festival, which is open. Okay. It's in this little town kind of north of Houston where people from like even Dallas and stuff could get there in a couple hours. And it runs for probably 2 months every year in the fall. And it's a Renaissance Fest. I had never been to a Renaissance Fest in my life. Went to the Texas Renaissance Festival today. Gorgeous weather. It was like 70 degrees out and just breezy. However, my understanding of Renaissance was sorely tested today. I'm not a historian. Okay. I'm just a college dropout that's read a few books. Right. But I understand the Renaissance as referring to a period of European history, you know, kind of the 14th to end of the 16th century that was marked by an explosion in arts, literature, technology, science. But all humans, they were all human, you know, Germans, English, French, Italians, all humans. I go to this thing, a solid 25% of the people there were elves. There were a couple of wizards. I don't think wizards are real. I saw at least 2 or 3 people that I'm pretty sure were vampires. I may have just wandered into an outdoor cosplay convention. There was a lot of non-Renaissance shit going on here.
Paulo Costa was there.
Paulo Costa was there, eating the fried Twinkie and preparing to blow weight for whatever his next fight ends up being. It was something. It was an eye-opening experience. I'm sad I waited this many years to go to a Renaissance Fest. If I'd known they were this much fun, I would have done it more times. That's all I got on that. Give me your overall temperature on this card. The UFC does 11, 12 pay-per-views a year. This one is in Abu Dhabi. Give it a letter grade on paper.
Yeah, so for anyone who's ever wondered if we pre-planned what we're going to talk about, we start. Obviously, this is Exhibit A of that is not true. Because I'm like, where the hell is he going with this? I thought you were going to go into like, the mass, I know art and everything was really major during the Renaissance and the painting of the ceilings and all this stuff. I think you're going to say, the masters, Makhachev and Volkanovski, that, 600 years from now, we'll still be talking about these greats.
I should have done any or all of those things, but it really wasn't a segue into talking about the card at all. Just what was on my mind.
How the card? I thought the card is good already, but now it is an absolute A. I mean, there's no way. If you told me 2 weeks ago, without giving me an answer, who was replacing, just Paulo Costa has fallen off the card, I'd be like, oh my god, this card has gone to shit. And then you add in, oh yeah, Charles Oliveira just fell out, I'd be like, oh my god, this card's an F. To get Kamaru Usman and Alex Volkanovski, 2 of the greatest fighters who's ever lived, to step up, take huge gambles on less than it was like a week and a half. When it was announced, but I think it was announced that Tuesday. What is that? That's like 11 days, 10 days, 11 days.
Like, dude, 18 months ago, they were the top, like Volkanovski and Usman were the top 2 pound for pound fighters in the sport.
I still think they are.
Like, I mean, Usman's taken a loss or two, but
I'm sorry, Usman.
I'm sorry,
I was thinking of Volkanovski. Yeah.
18, 24 months ago, they were the top 2 pound for pound fighters in the sport. Usman clearly, needs to bounce back. There's open questions, but I never asked you this, but if you'd asked me, I would have said, dude, I'd love to see him go to middleweight and see what he can do with whatever time is left to him.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. And now he's going to.
Absolutely. I think about this, like, if you went to a concert and you were, like, showing up to a concert and say it was, like, a huge one. Like, oh, man, you got these 2 big headliners. It's, like, Aerosmith, and we'll say so. Aerosmith will be like your Charles Oliveira, and I don't know. It's kind of hard to come up with something for Paulo Costa, but like one of those ones that like hipsters really like. I don't know, Radiohead or somebody like that. You're better with the rock analysis than I am. So you're like that, and they're like, yeah, guys, sorry, both Aerosmith and Radiohead can't be here, so we're not going to cancel the show. Ladies and gentlemen, opening up is going to be AC/DC followed by the freaking Rolling Stones. Like, are you kidding me? Like, how does this happen? Like, listen, say all the shit you want about the UFC, and they have their own problems, and there's a lot to it. And I got to fix my hat. I get too excited. I mix my hat up, and my oldest daughter makes fun of me. She said, Dad, why do you wear a hat like that? And you do it on a podcast? Oh, my God. Anyways, for everything, to put these fights together, this short notice, everyone keeps talking about, and I'm sure you've seen the memes of Alex Volkanovski walking around with the wheelbarrow with these gigantic testicles.
Mm-hmm.
That's all 4 of these fighters.
Yeah.
Because Makhachev still just gave himself a tougher matchup. A guy that he's had his toughest fight to date, other than the one time he got knocked out, but
yeah,
a recent memory. Taking on him, Chimaev goes against Costa, who I think most people were picking him to win, and Costa looked terrible against Luke Rockhold and all this shit that goes on with Costa. It didn't seem like a big threat to Chimaev. To now Kamaru Usman, who, by the way, you mentioned this a year and a half ago, or a year ago, whenever it was. That fight isn't taking second bill on this card. No. It's the top bill.
Yeah.
The guts on these guys. I mean, think about this for a second. Alex Volkanovski, you're stepping up on a week and a half notice without a full camp. And then now he can say he was training for this moment. Yeah, fine. It's not the same. It's not the same without knowing, when you're in the gym and that coach is yelling you, come on, another hard 30 seconds, be a tight. Are you really going that hard if you don't have are you going as hard as you possibly? No, Alex Volkanovski probably does, because that's why he's Alex Volkanovski. But I know I'm rambling here for a second, but I just love these 4 guys to doing this. And Volkanovski to go into upper weight class against the best guy in the world, a guy you just lost to on a week and a half notice. Kamaru Usman, you're on 2 losses. Your career is pretty much, to be a top contender is this is it for you. And you're going to go up a weight, take on the boogeyman that nobody really is stepping up to fight unless you're Kevin freaking Holland. These guys are not human. This is why they're all-time greats.
I completely agree, and it's even more admirable than that makes it sound, because a lot of times when a fighter steps up on short notice to fight somebody someone who's like Islam Makhachev or Khamzat Chimaev, the fighter stepping up has nothing to lose. Here, that is not the case. This isn't Nate Diaz getting off his boat.
Especially Usman.
Yeah. Well, no.
Especially Volkanovski still has the backup plan.
But here's my thing. Volkanovski too, because it's not like Nate Diaz getting off his boat to fight Conor McGregor on short notice where he literally has nothing to lose. If he gets wasted, that's all anybody expected. If he does better than expected, great. If he beats McGregor, he's a superstar for life, and we know which thing happened. Here, Volkanovski has something to lose, because the last time he and Makhachev fought, he took Makhachev down to the wire. You thought Islam won. I thought Islam won, but about a quarter of the people on MMA decisions thought Volkanovski won, and everybody thought it was a great fight. Everybody thought it was the toughest fight anyone's given Makhachev, aside from that kind of weird quick knockout. If Volkanovski goes out this time and just gets washed, then it's like, well, the first one was a fluke. Once Makhachev got it dialed in, we clearly knew who was the better fighter. Like, he has almost as much to lose here as Makhachev.
Yeah, and Makhachev obviously has the title to lose, but the other thing that he has is he'll have the other argument. So yeah, he won the first fight, and everyone, think about this: how many people still call Alex Volkanovski the pound for pound best fighter in the world, and he lost to Makhachev. People still said, yeah, you won, but it was super close. If the weights were you were so much bigger, if the weights were equal. So I would say the majority of people still thinks Volkanovski is the best pound for pound fighter in the world. So And I'm okay. I do. So, but I'm okay with that. Like if you want to go Makhachev, that's fine. But now if he wins easily, it's going to be, well, yeah, like the other argument people could have, yeah, well, you beat a guy on, just came off from a surgery, coming in a week and a half in up a weight class. You were training, he wasn't. Like he's not going to get his full credit.
Right.
So he has a lot, like he doesn't really gain anything. He's still he wins. He's still the champ. He does. Yeah, he beats Volkanovski again. I guess you don't have to do a trilogy or anything like that if you win. But it's just what he says. When I'm going to mess up the quote that like when opportunities like this come, you don't say no. Because he's a freaking G.
Yep.
I like all four of these guys. And think about this for a second. Chimaev was the guy. The last time we saw him fight was that Nate Diaz debacle. Then ended up being Kevin Holland. He got so much hate.
Yeah,
and I think he'll get that with Usman if he wins. Oh, you beat the guy who's on a 2-fight losing streak and he's up a weight and this and that. But my respect for him, because not my respect for him has gone up. Not because not only did the debacle with Diaz happened, but it was like no remorse. Not like, guys, I'm sorry, I fucked up, I did this. It was like complete opposite, like almost like joy.
Oh, joy. He like cut this bizarre promo after the win. But
that's not the narrative this week now.
It isn't. It's the fight that is in front of us right now has sort of, it's killed all the noise. All of a sudden, we're going to get up there and there's going to be a little setting of the table, but mostly we've just got a couple of hellacious fights to talk about.
And you know who's the biggest loser in all this? Charles Oliveira. And I'll tell you why. If Volkanovski wins, we're getting a trilogy fight.
We are.
Oliveira's waiting even longer.
Oliveira's waiting even longer.
And he's older. And he doesn't have, I mean, I know he's not as old as you think he is,
but he's got hella miles off him.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
He's always been a little injury prone / bad weight cut prone. Yeah, getting Charles Oliveira to the cage is a production. So missing 6 to 9 months of what should still be close to his physical prime is going to hurt. Like we'll probably see Oliveira take some kind of other fight in between would be my guess.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say before we'll go, before we break down this fight, the one thing that I feel is missing, and obviously this is the biased American in me, I wish this was in America. I wish it was at nighttime. And you know what I mean? I like the early cards. I like, if I can go to bed earlier, but going overseas won't have the same feel, at least in America. The crowd isn't this rowdy. The crowd, if you're in New York City, you're in Vegas, I mean, those are probably your two spots. And this fight is headlining it. I mean, having their faces on, ticker in Times Square or something like that.
Yeah,
that's the only thing this thing is missing. Yeah,
like having Makhachev and Volkanovski just on 40-foot tall broadsides on some of the buildings around Times Square. I agree, but we have to remember what Fight Island was about in the first place. The UFC started working with Yas Island, with Etihad Arena, because when COVID hit back in 2020, there were so many, not just fighters, but of the best fighters in the UFC and the best prospects who were on their way to the UFC that all of a sudden couldn't travel. And this was sort of a way for those fighters and fighters, from Brazil who couldn't get out of Brazil to the US to get fights. And it's still serving that purpose in a way, only now it's just the Russia-Ukraine conflict and so forth that's causing it. Because you look at this card, there's 13 fights. 10 of the 13 have at least one fighter from Russia, the CIS, or the Middle East. And we don't know in how many of those cases it's because it's easier for them to get a visa as opposed to just, they fought in UAE Warriors and Brave CF anyway. They have a fan base here. But yeah, I mean, in terms of
that better than I do.
This still feels like a 2021 Fight Island card.
Yeah. But it's freaking good.
Okay. South of the top two fights that we just spent 10 minutes talking about, name me one other fight on this card you're most excited for, or if you can't name a fight, one fighter you're most excited for.
There's a lot of good ones, but Elliot versus Muhammad is a really fun scrap.
You stole mine, so I'm gonna just go with the real obvious one and say that the debut of Shara Bullet is, I mean, the hype is either gonna be real,
we'll get to him,
or it's gonna be, well, that didn't turn out well, or it's gonna be somewhere in between. But it's gonna be one of the most watched curtain jerkers in a UFC.
It's the first fight, huh? That's crazy.
In a long time.
Yeah.
Any other general thoughts on this card that we're both clearly giving an A+?
Yeah,
with card of the year potential all over it.
Yeah.
Any other general thoughts before we dive in?
Yeah. No, I don't think I just reiterate how much I respect, like this feels to me, watching these two guys fight. Well, I'll get to it later.
Right.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about.
We'll get to it when we get to it. First fight out of the gate at UFC 294 is a middleweight matchup between the debuting Shara Magomedov and Bruno Silva. Magomedov, the 29-year-old Dagestani, is 11-0 as a professional mixed martial artist. This will be his UFC debut. As I mentioned, he has fought primarily all over, again, kind of the CIS, what we would once have called former Soviet republics. He fought twice in December, like 8 days apart, getting his best win, a unanimous decision win over Nickal Ragozin, and then showed up in Thailand like 8 days later and blew someone away in like 8 seconds. He makes his long-awaited UFC debut here. He's been kind of an insider tip as the next Khamzat, the next Shavkat type guy. And he draws Silva. 34-year-old Brazilian is 23-9 overall. He is 4-3 since joining the UFC as a former M1 global middleweight champ. He's coming in off of a loss. He got choked out late in the first round by Brendan Allen at the Emmett versus Topuria fight night card back in June. Prior to that, he had a first round knockout of Brad Tavares back in April. Odds on this one find Magomedov a comfortable favorite in his UFC debut, but that should not be surprising because a piece of trivia that I forgot to toss to you during the intro, Keith, there are 13 fights on this card. 11 of the 13 have at least a 2-1 favorite. This is one of them. Magomedov around -225, Silva around +175.
11 out of 13 have 2-1 favorites.
Or more. There are some that are 4-1.
Wow.
Or higher. But yeah, only 2 on the entire card that are less than a 2-1 favorite.
A lot of my notes are, this is a tough fight to pick. Apparently not.
Well, we'll get to some of them because I think a couple of the lines are way off. This is not one of them. I'll come right out and say that I do not think Shara Magomedov is... I think he has a ton of upside. I think he's a very good, very athletic, skilled, exciting fighter who definitely belongs in the UFC. But I'm definitely not ready to call him the next Khamzat Chimaev. I understand a lot of the reason why. They are both, they're both in the same weight division. Depending on what they're doing, they're either a huge welterweight or a decent sized middleweight. They both have the same kind of build, like kind of tall, long-armed for the division, but with tons of muscle on their frame. They're both very athletic. They both just blew through everybody on their way up. They both have they even both have kind of a visual hook. Khamzat Chimaev has like the hair lip repair that everybody sees, that scar right across his lip. Shara Magomedov has one working eye. It's hard to miss. Like beginning stage Shara Magomedov looks like end stage Mike Bisping. It's like it's
he should wear a patch.
That would be.
He should walk around with a patch and just be like a villain from the 80s.
Dude, he's already a ginger Russian, like with an eye patch.
Very
like,
offended by that.
Hey, you and he got the same tan. You might be distantly related.
I got both my eyes though.
You do. In terms of striking, he's primarily orthodox kickboxer, blisteringly fast hands and really, really fast kicks, tons of power and everything. He has sturdy enough takedown defense, at least against the overwhelmed kind of guys he's been fighting. Good takedowns of his own, which he tends to use only as an occasional change of pace or last resort. He would much rather knock people out on the feet. Rather than call him the next Khamzat Chimaev, it's almost more tempting for me to call him more like a middleweight Zabit. Just long, rangy, surprisingly fast guy with surprisingly good power. He doesn't throw quite as much unorthodox stuff as Zabit, but he's certainly willing to. But he feels to me kind of like middleweight Zabit right now, where Zabit was always a much better wrestler than you thought he was, just because he was so reluctant to use it unless he had to. I'm excited to see where he goes in the UFC. Even at the middleweight division, I'm tapping the brakes on calling him an instant future contender, but we'll learn a lot against Silva. I like Silva's collapse and decline within the last 2 years or so has been something to behold. He's 1-3 in his last 4. The one win over Brad Tavares. I mean, Tavares himself seems to be in decline. That was a back and forth fight. Like, Tavares hurt him bad that round too. And then on top of everything, Silva dropped him and the fight was stopped pretty early. So it's, I mean, I came out of that fight thinking, you know what, if Silva and Tavares fight 10 times, we probably get in first round knockouts 8 out of the 10, but it's going to be almost evenly split between the two guys. So nothing about it told me that Silva is back. And here, this is a bad matchup for Silva. Silva, I mean, we think of him as a huge middleweight, but when he came to the UFC, he was an incredibly built middleweight, but in terms of his actual stature, he's not a gigantic guy. Well, Alex Pereira is bigger than everybody, but even Mearshart and Allen were visibly taller, had longer reach than Silva. Silva's cartoonishly jacked build has kind of faded over the course of his second UFC contract, as has his gas tank, as has his speed. I mean, I've kind of said where there's smoke, there's fire, or, well, now where there's a lack of smoke, maybe there's a lack of PED fire. But here, unless Magomedov fouls up, Silva's going to be there for him. Just Silva's preferred style is to be a Muay Thai influenced brawler. Magomedov is faster, bigger, hits harder, has a greater diversity of strikes. And where I thought Silva had sneaky good wrestling at one point, I don't know if it's sneaky good anymore. And even if so, Magomedov's takedown defense is too stout. This is a bad matchup for Silva. I think Magomedov just starts chewing him up right away on the feet, probably knocks him out in the first round, and the hype train is really, really going to pull out of the station.
Yeah, you compare him to Zabit. He also has that like bushy hair that Zabit has too.
The Abraham Lincoln beard and like kind of frizzy hair. Yeah.
Yeah. If you haven't seen this guy, he's a scary looking dude with he looks like he could be a villain. He
looks like one of the henchmen from a Die Hard movie. You just expect him in like a black turtleneck in the back. Just, there's going to be somewhere 2/3 of the way through where he beats Bruce Willis almost to death and gets pushed down an elevator shaft.
He could be in if you put a patch on him, he could be in like a James Bond movie.
Or he could be in Cobra. He could be like a G.I. Joe.
There you go, the Russian version. I'll start with Bruno Silva because, I mean, we know what we get with this guy, but, the dude's really inconsistent. I mean, he looks great one fight, terrible the next one. What he does, he can fight out of both stances. He loves to brawl. He fights like a wild man. I mean, he loves closing distance, throwing like a flying knee. He throws tons of big looping punches. He does have serious power. I mean, you see, how he knocked out Brad Tavares, which is always, even though we both kind of feel Brad Tavares might be on his way out, but that's still a good win. But he doesn't have the best technique. I mean, he throws from his hips. So he overextends on his shots, leaving him open to counter. He gets tagged up. It seemed like every fight. I mean,
reminds me of kind of like one of the second string shoot a box guys from the early guys. Like not Shogun or Vanderlei, but a Cyborg like Santos type guy. Ninja, Cyborg Santos, like the guys that just swing wild, and it was enough a lot of the time, but the best of the best would tool them up. When they were facing a Japanese fighter, they were 30 pounds heavier than or Punk Minowa. I mean, Gerald Mearshart was piecing him up.
I mean, even like a fairly low level talent like Jordan Wright was landing shots on him. He is strong in the clinch, but very poor defensive wrestler. I mean, Wellington Turman took him down. Andrew Sanchez took him down. Jared Mershaw took him down. I mean, Jared Mershaw, we both is a much better wrestler than he gets credited for. He struggles to get up. He has a BJJ black belt, but he has 0 submissions in his career. Now you move over to Magomedov. We kind of buried the lead on him a little bit because not only is he like this hyped up prospect, he's a very controversial prospect. I mean, this dude, well, one, being blind in one eye, making his UFC debut, obviously, some people might have issues with that, but he's also a very hothead guy. I mean, I saw one video where he kicked a guy during a BJJ competition, and the guy just submitted him like very cleanly. He just got up and kicked him. But the bigger one was, did you see the video when he got in a fight in the mall?
Yeah.
And so he, I know in Russia and Dagestan, obviously it's a different culture, but it was a guy like kissing his girlfriend. He got mad that the guy was kissing his girlfriend in front of him. He confronted the guy. In fairness, the guy did throw a punch at him first, but then he got on top of him. But that wasn't the issue. It wasn't like, oh, he scrapped it up and that was the end of it. Then when they get separated and it's all over with, he like hides somewhere knowing the guy's coming out. And as soon as the guy goes out, he just sucker punches this dude out cold. And then like Vanderlei Silva, like Shogun Hua, foot stomps him on his head. Yeah. So, dude, just don't apologize. Just like if someone asks you about him this week, just go straight villain. Like, say like, well, that guy shouldn't have been a bitch then. He threw a punch at me. Of course I had to kill him. Like we need that. We need that scary Russian guy. I mean, the dude's got some serious power. He's a serious striker. He's got some professional kickboxing experience. He moves well, very athletic. He can pick apart from range, very fast, nice jab. Attacks with combinations, hits hard. I mean, he's got 10 KOs, I think 7 in the first round. Incredible kicking game. I mean, mean calf kicks. He loves like hook kicks, body kicks. I'm absolutely in love with the step in knees. He also throws knees defensively, which I love. Like if someone's looking to take him down, he'll try to time you coming in and throw a knee. Something that Edson Barbosa used to always do back in the day, not as much. I haven't seen too much of his grappling, but he can wrestle a little bit. He's got pretty, like you mentioned, he's got like Mirko Cro Cop takedown defense, where it's not the best, but he knows enough to keep it on the feet. But even when he's taken down, what I've seen of him, he's got back to his feet. This is a really fun fight. I think Silva's the perfect stylistic matchup for Magomedov. I can see Silva throwing these big, huge looping punches, and he pays the price for them. I think he walks right into a big counter. I think Magomedov knocks him out in the very first round.
All right, 2 picks for Sharabutdin Magomedov to make a thrilling and successful UFC debut. Next up on the UFC 294 prelims, Victoria Dudakova will attempt to extend her flawless UFC record against Jinh Frey. Dudakova, the 24-year-old Russian, is 7-0 as a professional. She is 1-0 since joining the UFC out of the 6th season of Dana White's Contender Series. She debuted back in July at the Holm versus Bueno Silva Fight Night card, where her fight with Estela Nunes lasted just 34 seconds. She tried to take down Nunes, posted her arm the wrong way, and doggone it, is there anything worse than a bad injury happening at the Apex? I don't know, but we were subjected to what felt like 2 full minutes of Nunes just wailing in pain and kind of writhing around like a dog that had been hit by a car in this empty. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting PTSD from that injury. Anyway, 34-second TKO. She's gonna look to go 2-0 in the UFC against Frey. 38-year-old Dallas native is 11-9 overall. She is 2-5 since joining the UFC as a former Invicta atomweight champ. She's on a 3-fight losing streak. She's dropped fights to Vanessa Demopoulos, Poliana Viana, and Elise Reed. The most recent of those, the Reed fight, was a unanimous decision at the Cara France versus Albazi card back in June. Odds here, unsurprisingly, heavily favor the Russian. She is -400, Frey +310 on the comeback. Keith, I'm going to flip this one to you, but you and I 2 years ago, back in 2021, both remarked how nice it was that Jinh Frey did get a couple of UFC wins finally.
Yeah.
Something to put on the mantelpiece alongside all of her other accomplishments as one of the best women of her generation in a weight class that barely existed. Here, she's on a 3-fight losing streak. She's a whopping underdog to a fighter who, at least in my opinion, is a good but not great prospect. Great. But does Frey have what it takes to even make this I shouldn't say interesting, because even when she wins, it's not interesting.
No, she's never interesting.
Does Frey have what it takes to make this close?
She's interesting, like when, like you're at the Renaissance fair and some nerd comes up to you and tells you about like some painting you're looking at, and you go, interesting.
Thanks. I wonder how Jinh Frey is going to do tonight.
yeah. I can see Jinh Frey at the Renaissance fair.
And nobody will mess with her. She'd be this like 5'1" chick that's just ripped to the gills, got a huge sword across her back and some shit. Yeah.
8-pack.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Jinh Frey stopped fighting. I just want her to be. I want to just like when I'm looking at a YouTube video and an ad comes on, is Jinh Frey giving like dieting advice. Like, that you ever see those videos that like, I don't know, like real good looking dude who's like, oh, you shouldn't listen to any diet person ever. Like, you should eat pizza, and I'll teach you how you're gonna lose weight eating pizza.
Oh yeah,
and not working out. I just want Jinh Frey to do videos like that
for sure.
And all right, so what'd you say the odds were?
Dudakova's minus 400, Frey plus 310.
Nuts. That's nuts. like Jinh Frey. I mean, there's some people I love watching film on. Some people that I learn stuff when I watch them. Jinh Frey is in that category where it's like, okay, when the card comes down, okay, I'm skipping Jinh Frey. Like if I get to Jinh Frey, I'll get to her, but there's 26 fighters on the card. She's 26th on my list. And I watched Alec Volkanovski 3 times, you know? I mean, she's a southpaw. I mean, she's a technically sound boxer, but her output, it was always historically low. And then she started, there was a little run where I was like, wow, Jinh Frey's actually throwing punches. And then her last fight, she did it again. She just had no output. She's a counter striker. She does do well to pick up her opponent's rhythm and kind of beat them to the point of contact, but she's older now, so I don't know if that's still there. Even though she's an undersized former atomweight, and she's still built like an atomweight, she can grind in the clinch. She wears her opponents down there. She can wrestle. She'll drop down like a single leg and run the pipe. She can shoot some takedowns, some decent entries. But I do think her wrestling ability has been fading. I mean, she got out-wrestled by Elise Reed, who isn't really known for her wrestling in her last fight. She did show that she can still control against Gloria DePaula. She controlled on the ground. She's hard to take down. I'll say that. But if she is taken down, she struggles to get back to her feet because she's undersized. She's she's undersized. She's never been a great athlete. More like a technically sound person than explosive. And I'm kind of worried about her chin. I mean, like go back to like Polyana Viana knocked her out, and we both know that Polyana Viana is not really known for her striking. Now, Dudakova, the first thing that jumps out to me is she's 24 years old. I mean, you got to love that. You said that she's a hyped up prospect. Yeah, she is. I think some of that goes with things outside of the UFC, why she gets a lot of hype. I mean, she could be a model,
Yeah, and not like a fitness model. No, just a regular model.
Yeah, if like she was dating like one of the Logan Paul brothers next week, like it wouldn't surprise me. Or whatever the Logan Paul version of Russia was. She's a good athlete. I'll say that. But on the feet, I mean, she is raw as they come. She throws a lot of wild strikes, a lot of looping strikes. She loads up. She strikes like kids do. Like, she turns her whole body to kind of wind up on her shots. Her striking is, and you can tell she's working on it, but it's all like, I have to learn this, but I really just want to grab you, go for a takedown. She will shoot for some takedowns. We saw that in her UFC debut, even though it was really short. But she's much better at closing the distance and kind of grinding in the clinch and using her size. She'll go for throws. She'll go for foot sweeps. Good top control. She's got 4 submissions on her record. But the one thing about her ground game that I'm not, that she needs control. I think you said it last time. You said that she wants to keep a grappling movie. She rushes submissions, which is an issue. Almost like a very judo. If you watch judo, jumping into things. I think this line is way off. Like, I think this should be a pick'em. Frey is so much more polished of a fighter than Dudakova is. If you're going with Dudakova, you're really going with athleticism and potential. Like, she's 24. Could she have improved a lot since her last fight? Which is obviously a very good possibility. She's bigger. She's younger. She's got the better ground game. But this is a step up in competition, and I have zero confidence in that pick. So, I mean, if you're a betting, I want to say this, and we say it enough, but if you're a new listener, we're not a betting show. We give our picks, we give our breakdowns, and you bet on how you feel. There's a lot of good people out there with advice. Jay Petrie on our website gives out betting advice. Sean Sheehan gives out betting advice. So you want to get betting advice, go to those guys. But if I was a bettor, I would bet on Jinh Frey. Now, I'm not picking Frey because I'm just if this was 3 years ago, I'd probably take Frey. I don't know what she has left. And Dudakova, she's still so much bigger than her that I think she might be able to grind her in the clinch, get some takedowns, lay on top of her. Give me Dudakova by decision.
I am in wholehearted agreement with basically everything you put down there, especially to the point that I favor Dudakova in this fight as the younger, bigger fighter, the one who is more likely to have made strides between her last fight and this one, and Frey as someone who is pushing 40 in essentially, the second fastest division in mixed martial arts. But I agree, the lines do not make a ton of sense because all we know about Dudakova is that she has a quick win on a freakish arm injury against somebody that Frey probably would have been favored to beat. And that's about it. If we learn halfway through the first round that Dudakova can't get Frey down, we're in for 15 long minutes, and we're in for a split decision that Jinh Frey maybe wins. I completely agree. Frey just historically bad, historically low output, but the flip side of that is that she's always been fairly defensively sound on the feet. It's almost like her strategy is built around not getting hit hard, not getting hit cleanly, just, technically sound, very buttoned up, reluctant to come out of her shell and throw her own offense. And Dudakova, who's just kind of wade forward with big looping arm punches and kind of hope to crash into Frey and end up on the ground. Frey might make her look amateurish on the feet. Dudakova, I mean, she's big, she's pretty strong, she's pretty athletic, but for someone who needs the fight on the ground, her takedown game is not that reliable. She's pretty good at crashing into people, starting scrambles, and trusting herself to come out the best in them. Even the way she injured Nunes, those little sticky octopus, like those wacky wall crawler type things? Her takedown game, it's almost like throwing one of those and just watching it kind of sticking. Because she shot a single from way outside. You could tell that she wasn't really intending to finish the single. She just wanted to get in on Nunes' hips, do what she could, roll for a leg, try to take her back standing, and Nunes happened to kind of go over post, and the whole thing's over. I don't know if that works on Frey. My guess is that it works enough across 3 rounds that Dudakova wins at least 2. But yeah, give me Dudakova by decision as well in a fight that, 1, ends up looking like a Jinh Frey fight for long stretches, and 2, maybe sends Dudakova back to the drawing board with some things to fix, even as the victor. But yeah, I think the line's way out of whack on this one as well. Next up on the UFC 294 undercard is a featherweight matchup between Nathaniel Wood and Muhammadjon Naimov. Wood, the 30-year-old Englishman, is 19-5 overall. He is 7-2 in the UFC. He is 3-0 since moving up to featherweight. He started off as a bantamweight and did perfectly respectably. He went 4-2 in that division, decided to move up to 145 pounds. And since then, again, he's perfect. The only thing that's been able to even slow him down is a freakish training camp injury where he slashed his knee open on some exposed molding and had to back out of a fight. But aside from that, he looks like a force in his new division. He's going to go for his 4th straight win at 145 pounds against Naimov. Naimov, 29-year-old from Tajikistan. I believe he's the first Tajik fighter in the UFC. Both of them, Gafarov and Naimov, are on this card, and I want to say that Naimov was the first, but one of them was the first. At worst, the second Tajik fighter in the UFC. 9-2 overall, 1-0 since joining the UFC as a veteran of Season 5 of Dana White's Contender Series. He lost on the Contender Series, kind of went back to regional shows in the U.S., and got the short notice call-up to face Jamie Malarkey at lightweight and kind of shocked the world, or at least shocked Malarkey by knocking him out in the second round. With that out of the way, Naimov is back down to his native weight class and looking for his first win there against Wood. He is not favored to do so. Wood is minus 310, Naimov plus 240. Naimov is a great story. I mean, we joke about the stadiums full of people going crazy for the first and second fighters from their country ever to fight in the UFC, but jokes aside, it's a cool story. I mean, imagine being in that strip of countries. You're in there along with Russian states like Dagestan and Chechnya. You're out there with Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, and all these countries are sending mad numbers of fighters to the UFC that are doing great things, and your country hasn't sent a single person to the world's top promotion, and all of a sudden you've got 2. Of course they're going crazy. So he's a great story, and at 29, he has some upside going forward, but I do think he's actually a pretty limited fighter. I'm interested in what these guys look like in the cage, because our heights and weights have Naimov as substantially taller than Wood, but my guess is that even though Wood is the one who used to fight at 135, there's not going to be much of a difference in size between the two. Wood was a good size bantamweight, and Naimov is kind of a short, stocky, stumpy featherweight. He hits stupid hard, but he doesn't throw the straightest punches. So his ability to get that power to the chin of a defensively sound striker, I'm not sure about. His takedown defense is just okay, which, I mean, if you come from that part of the world, that's going to be a problem for you if you can't stop a takedown. Here, I think Wood is probably better everywhere except in just single one-shot power. And I think Wood is too good to just make a mistake and get caught with his chin in the air against Naimov. I think he probably carved him up a bit on the feet. I think the takedowns are going to be there if and when he wants them. And I think he has a very good ground game. I could picture him taking down Naimov, getting in some ground and pound, advancing position, and probably doing his best work there. He might be able to outstrike Naimov on the feet for long stretches, but that's where he runs his biggest risk of getting caught with something big and silly. So give me Wood to make the smart choice, take Naimov down, do work there. I'm going to say Wood gets this done by second round TKO, ground and pound.
Yeah. I love the what's the name of this country? Tajikistan.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the Tajikistan people. I don't know jack shit about them. I will be that ignorant American. But I love the idea that they've showed it. That's that 4:00 in the morning. There is a stadium of people watching a guy who I'm sure some people know him, but a lot of them I bet don't even know the guy. Just to have that kind of pride in your country. I don't think my own family would get up at 4:00 in the morning for that. Like maybe my wife. Like my mom ain't getting up. Tell me how it goes. My sisters sure as hell ain't getting up. I'm gonna have one friend. In fairness, my friend probably hadn't go to bed yet, so maybe that's why they're up.
I'd come if I could cover it for sure, dog.
Yeah, there you go. Ben, you're a Renaissance man. If you were given a map of the world, you think all blank. You think you pick out Tajikistan?
I could pick out every country in the world and their capitals. I'd nail it 100%.
If you ever wonder who's more intelligent between me and Ben, there you go, right there. I couldn't tell you the difference between Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan. I'm sure there's another stand I forgot.
There's a lot of stands, but
Afghanistan and Pakistan. I know, but
well, it's because they've been on the map for decades. The rest of them, like the Soviet Union, fell in the early 90s, and it was like a piñata, and like 15 stands kept falling out. Like it definitely set me back a little bit. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna put you on the spot. What's the capital of Tajikistan?
Dushanbe.
This guy's unbelievable. I think he searched it up knowing I was going to ask him that. Nathaniel Wood, he's another example of a guy who's moved up in weight, and it was the best thing that happened to him. I mean, he's one of it's also maturity, like getting older and getting coming into his prime age just helped too. But just the more and more, I think it's just more and more examples. Now, there are some people who need to cut weight, and that's best for them. But I think generally speaking, I think it's a better thing for guys to move up. And then he was a young guy, so sometimes I don't think he had a choice, but really good striker, very composed, very accurate, nice, like crisp pop, crisp striking, good pop. He's a guy that he leads with his power right hand a lot. Which is a lot of guys, they lead with their front hand. He leads with the right hand a lot. He avoids shots. That's one thing I don't like about his striking. He avoids shots with shoulder rolls, which I'm not a fan of. I think that's more of a boxing thing than MMA. But he throws a lot of teep kicks up the middle. I mean, he brutalized Charles Rosa with calf kicks. He combines punches and kicks well, especially when he gets in the pocket. You talked about his wrestling. I think he's a much better wrestler than he gets credit for. I mean, that area of the world doesn't get enough credit, and they really have made huge jumps in wrestling than they did years ago. He gets inside.
And actually bringing up good wrestlers, not just importing Muhammad Mokaev and being like, look, we got great wrestlers too.
Yeah. like Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards is one of the best wrestlers in the UFC. He gets in the clinch, and he looks for body locks and stuff. That's in trips. That's where he's more good at. But he can also shoot from the outside. Good overall grappling. He's got 6 subs on his record, so I would say he's a submission threat. Naimov took the fight against Jamie Larkey on days' notice in his UFC debut. That's the other thing. Like, you come from a small country, you have this unbelievable moment. You have a whole country, of Tajikistan in an arena watching you. You take on a good guy in Jamie Malarkey. Like, that's not lower level. I mean, he's not a world beater or anything like that, but you beat Jamie Malarkey. That's a solid win.
Yeah.
And you get a knockout. It was so short, we didn't preview it. We previewed Malarkey versus Kutsaladze. Yeah. And so that's how short it was.
And Malarkey was a full head taller than this guy.
Yeah, and he's a really good striker. He can fight out of both stances. He's pretty elusive. Does a lot of L step in and cut at angles well. Uses a lot of feints to set up his shots. Big kicking game. Hard kicks to the body. Nice high kick. He also liked teep kicks. Now, I want to, if you didn't watch the fight, if you don't remember the fight, he caught Malarkey. Malarkey was winning, but he wasn't getting blown out by him. The one thing that Malarkey was able to do against him is he was pressuring him, and he didn't like the pressure. Now, again, when you take a fight on a couple of days' notice, you might not be able to fight you have to fight a little differently against Sergey Energy. But he doesn't like fighting off his back foot, which, I mean, not many people do, but it's something I want to point out. I do like when he gets inside, he looks for elbows. He's a good wrestler. He's got some fast entries, but I was surprised that he was taken down a couple times by Malarkey. But Malarkey, again, is also an historically underrated wrestler. And that's another area of the world that we don't talk about, the wrestling that has come leaps and bounds. One concern when you go to like his regional fights, he has gassed out in the past. A lot of that has to do with this like big, spectacular kicks that he does. I think it was a good fight. You said Wood was like what was his? How big of a favorite was
minus 310? Yeah.
I wrote down every fight, so I can't sit still. I'm one of these guys. I'm always doodling. I'm always doing something. I wrote down the fights, and I was trying to figure out which fight was one of the guys where, you said there was only 2 fights that it's not 2-1, and 2 of the ones I was like, oh, Frey Dudakova, that would be one of them, and wouldn't Naimov. So I'm already wrong on those. I've already changed it to 2 other ones. I like both guys. I really do. I think both guys are good additions to. I mean, obviously Wood's been in the UFC for a while, but I think we got a good fun affair on the feet, and I think we get some good scrambles on the ground. I'm picking Wood, but I think we got a little bit of war out of hand. I think it's gonna be one of those like a fun fight. It's buried in the prelims, so it's probably not gonna get fight of the night or anything like that. But I think it'll be one of those ones where you're pleasantly pleased with the fight. I think Wood is a little bit faster. I think he's a little bit more accurate. He's more experienced in like high level experience, and he's faced better competition. So I will go with Wood. I'll say Wood by decision.
Yeah. Considering some of the stuff we have further up this card, this could be one of those things where Wood versus Naimov is this absolute barn burner. But by the time the main event is done and you and I are, getting ready for the recap or whatever form that takes, it just feels like Wood versus Naimov was 3 days ago. Just because we've been through the emotional ringer so many times since then.
Yeah, and trying to figure out the time it's going to be here. Like in the East Coast, it's probably about 11 a.m. when this fight goes on. If you're in the West Coast, it's talking about 8 a.m. Like you eating breakfast. You got nothing going on. I'll tell you this right now. I'm an early riser. I'm not a good sleeper. If you got nothing going on a Saturday, which I know it's going to be hard for a lot of people, especially if you like me, you have kids who do sports and stuff. But if you live on the West Coast and you're like, you work Monday to Friday, you're 22, you don't have any kids. Is there anything better? Get up at 8 o'clock in the morning and watch fights and be done by, I don't know, 2 in the afternoon.
Go out and have your social life in the evening.
That's great, you go out for dinner. Shit, you might go out for lunch. Hell, I mean, Hawaii. What time would that be? It'd be
it's 3 hours before the West Coast, so it's like 5 in the morning.
Yeah, get up at 5 a.m. By 11, you're just starting your day. You already watched the fights. Of course, it'll be like 1 because you watched the recap show, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But that's part of the fights.
Yeah. Marcel Dorff, we expect to see you on the recap, man.
Yeah, he has no excuse.
Yeah. We head now to the lightweight division for a matchup between Mike Breeden and Anshul Jubli. Breeden, the 34-year-old Missouri native, is 10-6 overall. He is 0-3 in the UFC. He has lost to Alexander Hernandez, Natan Levy, and Terrence McKinney. The most recent of those, the McKinney fight, was back in August at the Luque versus Dos Anjos fight night, and it was very much a Terrence McKinney fight. Breeden was knocked out of his shoes in like 90 seconds. Breeden almost certainly on the last fight of his UFC deal, almost certainly with his back against the wall here, unless he wins and wins in impressive fashion, will face off against Jubli. 28-year-old from India is a perfect 7-0 as a professional. He's 2-0 since joining the UFC as the lightweight winner of the Road to UFC Asia tournament. He beat Yekisargi back in February at the Road to UFC final by second round TKO. So he's looking for yet another win to keep his professional record and his UFC record spotless. He is heavily favored to do so. He's minus 400, Breeden plus 300. Keith, Mike Breeden is 0-3 in the UFC. He was a Glory MMA and fitness guy. In the wake of that disintegration, he moved over to Marathon MMA with Trey Ogden, which the majority of the Glory guys who were local to Kansas City seem to have done. Does he have anything for Jubli here? Is he going to keep his job? Like, how do you see this fight breaking out?
That's your team, man. You know, when Sherdog used to send like guys out to different camps and stuff, and we got to send Ben out to Marathon and become the official journalist of that team. You love that team. They're doing good. They're doing very well.
They're doing.
I'm not talking shit. I'm just mentioning.
No, they're making the best of a bad situation.
Yeah. No, they're doing well. Trey Agnew being a pretty solid coach.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so Breeden, I think he's better than his record suggests. You know, he hasn't faced. I mean, what'd you say? You said Alexander Hernandez, Terrence McKinney, and who was the third guy?
Levy.
Yeah, like all three of those guys are solid UFC fighters. They're not the bottom of the barrel. You know, the worst one in that group is what? Alexander Hernandez?
And he got knocked out in the first round. And you know what? First round Hernandez is the best Hernandez for what it's worth.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I think he could be better than his UFC record shows. Now, he's a technically sound striker. He's got pretty good high output. He uses feints to set up his shots well. He's got pretty quick hands. I like that he steps in and really whips his right hand for knockouts. I like that he goes to the body. Pretty big kicking game, a lot of calf kicks. He'll rip a quick high kick. He's a guy, he wants to work from range. He doesn't want to be pressured. He doesn't want to get into a brawl. But the big issue on the feet is what's plagued him in his first three UFC fights is he has durability issues. I mean, Hernandez knocked him out. I mean, Terrence McKinney, and get knocked out by Terrence McKinney, there's no shame in that. Like, he's knocked out a lot of good guys. He will wrestle a little, but he's definitely not a very good defensive wrestler. I mean, Nathaniel Levy took him down 9 times. I mean, even in the Contender Series, Anthony Romero took him down twice. So that's another big, huge, flaw in his game. Move over to Jubli. Jubli's big for the weight class. He's a bigger guy. He's a pretty technically sound striker, throws straight shots down the pipe. He can pick apart opponents from range. I love his left hook. He does really well to wrap his overhand right around his opponent's defense, which is something I really love. He can throw. He can be a little too low output. You know, throwing single strikes, trying to land the best shot. I like that he works the body though. He's got some plus power. He can telegraph some of his power shots though. He can wind up a little bit more too much, but he does well to use his footwork, cut angles well. Which makes him tough to hit and counter. He's good at attacking, sliding away from counters, and then sliding back in. So kind of being like first and third in the combination, or the exchange, I say. I like that he goes with some step in knees. He's not much of an offensive wrestler, and what I've seen him, he's a pretty poor defensive wrestler, but he is hard to hold down. He works back his feet. But one concern when I saw in the Richardson, he is gassed out of the pass. So even though I said nice things about Breeden, I like Jubli here. Is it insane that he's 3-1, 4-1?
4-1.
Yeah, these odds have been way off. Especially if Breeden might have the offensive right. I don't know. You don't see either of these guys offensive wrestling much, but Breeden will occasionally look for a takedown. So having an edge in one area, and again, I don't know if he has the edge, but it wouldn't surprise me if Breeden does. It makes me feel like a guy shouldn't be that big of a favorite. That said, on the feet, Jubilee's a much sharper guy, a little bit quicker, hits harder. I think Jubli picks him apart, and I think he wins the decision. Give me Jubli by decision.
Yeah, I like the breakdown there, and maybe Jubli is better than I think, because I was coming into this with the thought that, okay, I was kind of surprised that he was the guy that came out of the Road to UFC tournament of the kind of Final Four there. He was the one that he definitely wasn't the first one I would have picked to have any kind of future with the UFC. But I was going to say, but you know what? I like what I see out of him when he goes to the ground. So to hear you praise his striking makes you think, oh, maybe he's a little better all around than I'm giving him credit for. I feel as though offensively on the feet, he puts his height and reach to good use these days. You mentioned he's good at wrapping punches around the guard of a, fighter that's pillaring, and that only really works if you have the reach advantage. Earlier in his career, I say earlier, he's 7-0, but in his early fights, he had a little bit of the tall man striking defense problem where he would lack head movement and just sort of back his head straight up and trust that to keep him out of harm's way. Because of that, he's gotten caught cleanly in quite a few of his fights, even for a guy who is still undefeated. But I really liked what I've seen out of him definitely in his 2 road to UFC fights and in some of his earlier stuff that I saw. For a guy that rarely initiates the wrestling, he seems very comfortable once the fight hits the ground. Like once the wrestling has started and they're in a scramble or he's sprawling or whatever's happening, he's a solid wrestler. He's a submission threat in transition as well as from top and bottom position, has pretty good top control. In his final, he ran over Sergey on the ground in a way I did not expect. I thought Sergey would have the advantage on the ground, and that was not the case at all. Jubli took his back, had him in almost a crucifix where he had his arm gift wrap, slid into mount, just pounded him on the ground. That was kind of an eye-opener for me. My guess here is that Jubli gives Breeden a lot of stuff he doesn't like the taste of on the feet. Breeden ends up either frustrated or desperate and shoots a takedown, and it ends up being the kiss of death. Give me Jubli here by, I'm going to say 2nd round submission, but 2nd round TKO, ground and pound would be almost as likely for me. But I think it gets initiated when Breeden shoots a takedown and Jubli makes him pay for it. Middleweights take the cage next as Azaitar and Sedriques Dumas face off. Azaitar, the 37-year-old German-born Moroccan, is 14-3-1 overall. He is 1-1 since joining the UFC all the way back in 2018. He won his debut by unanimous decision over Vitor Miranda. He's only fought once since then. Got punched out by Marc-Andre Barriault about 2.5 years ago at UFC 260. In between there, he has been kept on the shelf by a variety of issues, including injuries, including travel visa issues, and of course, most infamously, because of the stupid, Abu Dhabi incident where his brother or somebody from his entourage was climbing the outside wall of the fighter hotel trying to deliver him what he claimed was a bag of like French fries or some shit. It's so dumb that I'm getting dumber even trying to remind myself of what it was. So suffice it to say, he's fought twice.
So bad. You said you would get up at 4 a.m., but would you scale the outside of wall for me? Would you do that for me?
I totally would, but it's kind of like when you're the one who has to go out to, Wendy's or Whataburger or whatever for your family. So you're just taking a few of everybody's fries on the way back. Like you're getting 2/3 of a bag of fries, dude. Like that's
yeah. Chicken. Hey, there's gonna be 10 nuggets in this one. There's only 6. I don't know. I don't know. They must be running short. I don't know.
Those jerks. You should call and complain. All right. Suffice it to say, Azaitar has only fought in the UFC twice in going on 6 years now. This is shot number 3. Waiting for him will be Dumas. 28-year-old Floridian is also 1-1 in the UFC, but it's only taken him like 14 months to get there. He won on the Contender Series last August. Since then, he has a submission loss to Josh Fremd in March and a decision win over Cody Brundage in June. Odds? This is one of the 2 fights on the card that is closer than 2-1. Who's the favorite?
Dumas.
You are correct. Sedriques Dumas is -170. Abu Azaitar +140. If there was a good citizenship award for this card, neither of the guys in this fight is getting it. I'm not going to go deeply into it. Keith has an actual article on SureDog about some of the reasons Dumas should not be in the violence business professionally. And Azaitar, for as silly as the whole potato thing was, he has legit issues in his like personal conduct that make you kind of raise an eyebrow.
I don't know what has he done. I don't know his besides the potatoes.
He and his brother have both been linked to, well, for one thing, just public brawls and violence where they've like beaten the shit out of untrained people for situations that look like they may have created them, but also like a little bit of getting involved with the like the royal family in their country and being linked to like radicalizing elements, like stuff that's a longer than this 2-minute intro to really get into. But
okay, sorry.
No, here's the thing. All that stuff aside, during the time that all these distractions have kept Abu Azaitar on the shelf, his stock has plummeted. In 2018, after his after his win over Vitor Miranda, he was 32 years old, and he was, what was he at the time? I guess he would have been 14-2. A finisher for the most part, some high level experience in WSOF. He was a mildly intriguing prospect, and now he's 37. He is the beginning of Marc-Andre Barriault's resurgence, which, like, you don't want to be that guy. And just so much of the upside is gone. The reputation for silliness aside, he is a short, squat middleweight who managed to make a distance striking game work just because he was fast and explosive enough to bounce into range, hit taller fighters with hard stuff, and bounce back out of range. And he's had a seemingly endless gas tank. And against Barriault, it seems like a lot of that has faded, and that shouldn't be too surprising. Again, he's 37 now. This is not a good matchup for him, because if he's still the same Abu Azaitar, he's going to be trying to bounce into range against someone in Dumas who, for all the flaws in his game, he is big, he has good reach, and he delivers nasty power at a variety of ranges. Like, he loves his long kicking game, loves, his head kicks, his, body kicks, loves keeping people at distance with those kicks. But he's also good at throwing knees at people on the inside, throwing elbows, kind of mugging people with hockey fight type punches. I don't think there are going to be any real safe spots for Azaitar here. Yeah, I mean, the Barriault fight, Azaitar went down late just out of a combination of Barriault being bigger and kind of building, and Barriault being power bar and just not getting tired. I don't see that out of Dumas. Like, Dumas is either going to finish him early, or I expect that they're both going to kind of get tired at the same time and it's just going to drag out. So give me Dumas by decision here in a fight where he's clearly superior, but maybe just doesn't have enough left in the tank to finish Azaitar. What will be finished is any kind of prospect hope for Azaitar to be a future top 15 middleweight. I think that's gone.
Yeah, I think that might have been gone even before this fight happened. I'm not a fan of either guy. I haven't followed the Azaitar's history as much as Dumas, but I mean, he's a terrible human. I mean, the guy pistol whipped a woman. So, as far as his skills, I mean, yeah, he's a very big guy. He's a kickboxer. He's long and lengthy. He's explosive. He closes his distance really quickly, lands big, long shots. He hits hard. He's got a good kicking game, hard kicks to the body, good calf kicks. He has issues defensively. He backs straight up. He was cracked by Josh Frem in their fight. He's not much of an offensive wrestler, but he's a weaker defensive wrestler. He did stop some takedowns from Cody Brundage. He did still get taken down a couple times, but he had really heavy hips. He worked his way back up. He's not much of a submission threat, and he also rushes position. But he did get a guillotine on the Contender Series, but he gassed out bad against Josh Frem, though his cardio was much better against Cody Brundage. I mean, he looked like a completely different fighter. Azaitar on the feet, he's a brawler. Like, he wants to get it. He's very explosive. He gets inside in the pocket, and he tries taking his opponent's head off with every single strike. They're hard looping shots. I do like that he works the body. He's very physically strong. He will wrestle, kind of wild, get some wild scrambles going. He will go crazy for sub attacks and they end up in bad position. He's a weak defensive wrestler. He was taken down by Vita Moran 3 times and struggled to get up from the bottom. I got to correct something before I get sued. Allegedly pistol whipped a woman. So I would allegedly, but Dumas has gone on record. He has been arrested for domestics and convicted, I believe. Man, skill wise, I think he's probably the better fighter, but the police officer in me doesn't want to take him. So I'm gonna go with Azaitar. I'm gonna say Azaitar gets inside, lands some hard shots. I think he lands a few takedowns. I think this happens for 15 minutes. They both get really tired, and Azaitar wins a really ugly decision.
All right, we have our first bit of disagreement on the card.
Yeah,
our first upset pick of any kind, but we head now to the men's bantamweight division for a match between the undefeated, red-hot Javid Basharat and Victor Henry. Basharat, the 28-year-old Afghanistani by way of London, is 14-0 as a professional. He is 3-0 since joining the UFC out of the 5th season of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought most recently in January, where he took a unanimous decision over Mateus Mendonça. So he's looking to go 4-0 in the UFC. He will look to do it at the expense of Henry. 36-year-old Southern California native is 23-6 overall. He is 2-1 in the UFC. He is coming in off of a win. He took a split decision over Tony Gravely at UFC Fight Night Jan versus Dvalishvili back in March. Odds here, this is not one of the fights on the card where there is not a 2-1 or greater favorite. In fact, Basharat is one of the biggest favorites on the entire card. He is minus 425. Henry plus 350. Keith, I'm going to chip this one to you first, but I've said this before, anytime there's that big an underdog in a fight, I start by asking, okay, if the upset happens, what does it look like? And Victor Henry, as a guy who, at least offensively, presents a threat almost anywhere, would make me nervous taking someone as good as Javid Basharat as a greater than 4-1 favorite over him. Tell me if you feel any of that at all, or if you think this is going to look like a 4-1, like washing.
Yeah, the biggest thing. So I'll start with Henry. What he does well. I don't feel like I have a good read on Henry. I don't know if he's really good or he's just a guy. I mean, he looked tremendous against Hani Basolas, and then he looked really bad against Rafael Sanso, and then he looked really good against Tony Gravely. So I'm like, I don't know what he is. He's a good athlete. He moves well. He's got high volume. That's something that's ask what's the best chance of. He can just outvolume because Basharat takes moments off and can be low output. So that's one thing. He just beat him with volume. He's a builder who gets better as the fight moves along. He's pretty technical. He sets up attacks and uses feints well. He switches stances in mid combination, which I like. He doesn't have too much power, so I don't think obviously there's always like that clip him and win. But generally speaking, that would really surprise me. I shouldn't say really surprised me. Nothing really surprised me anymore, but it's less likely, I should say. He's got a really solid kicking game. So, kicks to all areas. He beat up Tony Gravely with teep kicks. Also had a good high kick. If he could keep him at bay with kicks, that's something that he could do. That Basharat might struggle to get by. He should, so he's not much of an offensive wrestler, but he showed some really solid takedown defense against a guy like Tony Gravely, who he wants to wrestle. He's got good hip control. If taken down, he is hard to hold down. I'm surprised that he doesn't try to get the fight to the ground more himself, though, because he's a good grappler. He's got 8 submission wins. I've seen him get some sweeps off his back too, which is becoming more and more rare in MMA. Yeah. As far as Basharat, he's a really well-rounded fighter, good striker, moves well, can fight out of both stances, very relaxed, calculated, got some good vision. He's accurate on the feet, not a lot of tells in his strikes. He throws combos, though he can be too patient and not throw enough. He he changes stance in mid combination to get a better angle, which I really love. Fast hands. He's got a really quick jab. Good at sliding in and out of range and landing shots. He's good at hand fighting. Using it to get around his opponent's attacks, grabbing hands, and feeling range and stuff like that. I love that he works the body. He can crack too. I wouldn't say he's like a one and done kind of power puncher, but he's got some stinging shot power. Great kicking game. I like his teep kicks up the middle. I like his mean calf kicks. I like that he checks like kicks, which is a few people do. I love the step in knees he was landing on Tony Gravely. He needs to clean up his defense. He carries his hands low. He backs straight up on the center line. He keeps his chin a little high. But he's a really good wrestler. I mean, he took Tony Gravely down again. I know I keep mentioning Gravely, but he fought both these guys. So there's something in common, I should say. But he's not your traditional wrestler. He's more of a creative scramble and win it. And he likes getting takedowns by catching kicks. He showed some good takedown defense against Tony Gravely, smothering top control. He looks to advance position on the ground. He has strong ground and pound, 6 submission wins, and a good cardio. So think about Basharat. Like, I have all these notes on him. He's just a guy, when you watch him, you just like keep writing things down. Like, he does this good. He does this good. He's got so many tools. This is a fun fight. I'm picking Basharat, though. Obviously, I'm not going on a limb. Being a 4-1 favorite, his striking is so sharp. I see him landing over and over on Henry, getting past the kicks, getting into that mid range. I think he'll mix in a couple takedowns himself. I like Basharat. I think it's gonna be a lopsided decision. Basharat by decision, maybe even have a 10-8 round in there.
I like the breakdown there, and I agree with a lot of those observations. Obviously, Henry losing to Asuncao was concerning, especially losing to Asuncao the way he did. I mean, I had Henry big time going into that one, just after beating Hani Barcelos pretty convincingly, because I thought Asuncao was a smaller, older version of a similar fighter to Barcelos, and Asuncao seemed very much to be at the tail end of his career, and Asuncao just had way too much success everywhere. And you kind of circled around my big takeaway from the Asuncao fight, which is where Henry's offense on the feet relies a lot on his kicks. He likes to kick a lot. He has good kicks, kicks to all levels. But Asuncao punished him by catching his kicks a lot. Either catching him and just using him to kind of catch the kick and sock him with a right cross with the other hand, like Anderson Silva did to James Irvin, or catching the kick and using it to topple him over. I think both those avenues are going to be open to Basharat if Henry elects to kick a lot. And yeah, I just think Basharat is faster and sharper on the feet. I think if this goes to the ground, Henry presents unique challenges there. You mentioned he's a very good grappler, and it's a unique brand of grappling. He came up primarily fighting in Asian promotions, at least for the last quite a few years, under the tutelage of Josh Barnett. So it's a little different flavor of grappling to what you're used to seeing out of, most of your North American UFC fighters in particular, where most of them have some type of amateur wrestling background, like high school, if not college, and then pick up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to go with it. And a lot of them will have predictable go-to techniques, predictable reactions in certain positions. And Henry's just a little bit surprising there. None of that really helps his chances against Basharat, though. Basharat has managed to answer some questions about himself since he's been in the UFC. I mean, he came to the UFC as an undefeated prospect, obviously, all finishes. They throw him in against Aron Kalin on the Contender Series, and he runs him over. And through that point, like his first 11 fights, he had a 100% finish rate. His 3 decisions have come in his last 3 fights. His 3 fights in the UFC have all gone the distance. It's the first 3 times he's gone the distance. And each time, he was the fresher fighter pulling away in the 3rd round. So one of the big questions you'd have about, an explosive, fast-moving fighter who had a bunch of 1st and 2nd round finishes have been answered. There's not even the question of, well, if this gets to the 3rd round, is Basharat going to be exhausted and Henry be able to take advantage of him? Nope. Basharat has shown that he is just fine. So, yeah, he's a huge favorite here. Henry offensively has lots of ways that he could score on him, but it would take something special to either finish Basharat or make enough of a change in the momentum of the fight that it affects the ultimate decision. I'm with you here. Give me Basharat by decision. Second from the top of the UFC 294 prelims is a lightweight matchup pitting Muhammad Yahya against Trevor Peek. Yahya, newsflash. The UFC's been going to Abu Dhabi for a while. It is one of the promotion's de facto homes away from home. Despite all the cards that the UFC has done in Abu Dhabi, despite the fact that UAE Warriors and Brave CF over next door in Bahrain have become such pipelines of talent to the UFC, Muhammad Yahya, when he steps into the cage, will be the first fighter from the United Arab Emirates to fight in the UFC. And heck, he'll already be in an arena in his home country. So like, it won't even be like Tajikistan where they all have to get on the bus and go somewhere. Anyway, the first Emirati fighter to fight in the UFC, 29 years old, 12-3 overall. He is the UAE Warriors lightweight champ, and he is on a 5-fight win streak that he will look to extend to 6 in the biggest fight of his life against Peek. Peek, 28-year-old Alabama native, is 8-1 with 1 no contest overall. He is 1-1 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. He had a successful debut, knocking out Eric Gonzalez with just 1 second left in the first round. Came back in June at UFC on ABC, Emmett versus Topuria, and dropped a unanimous decision to Jose Mariscal. So Peek looking to get back on track after his first career loss. This is the other of the fights on the card that is closer than 2-1. Keith, the favorite is -130. The underdog is +110. Who are they?
I'll say the favorite is Yahya.
It is actually Peek. Peek is -130. Yahya +110. 155 pounds is a tough division to stand out. You got to do a lot before you get on the radar. Do you see top 15 upside for either of these guys? And regardless of that, who wins?
No, neither guy. Yeah, no. I'm not really high on either of these guys. Obviously, I'm much more familiar with Peek as he's had a couple fights in the UFC. He's a very aggressive fighter. Like, he's fun to watch. I mean, he fights like a wild man. I mean, he throws all these punches, wild looping punches from his hips. He's got huge power. I mean, all his wins have come by way of knockout. He rips the body with wild hooks. He throws a ton of like lead uppercuts, which is just insane that happens in the UFC. He telegraphs his shots by loading up on everything. He overthrows his shots, so he's open to be countered. He bob and weaves, but he does it so drastically. So he's going to like dip to one side, and he's going to get blasted with a high kick or a knee or something one of these days. He when he throws kicks, he's got hard kicks. He will sneak in a takedown, but he's not a very good wrestler. He has some mean ground and pound though when he's on top, but he's been hurt bad. I mean, I'll say this: he can take a beating. I mean, Mariscal landed some big shots on him. Even in the Contender Series, he was hurt bad and he found the ability to win. But he also gassed out bad in Mariscal. He kept going hard, but he obviously the pace really slowed down. Yahya, he's a minus athlete. He's very flat-footed. He's a counter striker, but he throws a lot of single shots. He's not a wild guy. Like, he doesn't throw like wild looping shots. He throws straight shots down the pipe. He's got good power. He really steps into his shots when he does throw. But he's open to leg kicks, very boxing style. Doesn't check any leg kicks, keeps his chin high in the air. He's very hittable because he doesn't move his head. I haven't seen too much of his offensive wrestling. In the one fight I saw him on top, he had pretty good ground and pound, but his defensive wrestling is weak. I mean, and when he's been taken down, he struggles to get back up. He was almost knocked out in his last fight. And, he has the cardio to 25 minutes. I mean, he's a champion and his previous organization, and he's going 25 minutes, so going 15 minutes shouldn't be a problem. but I was like watching his last fight, and I wasn't scoring it because I'm basically really focusing on one guy, but he might have lost his last fight, or it was really close. I'm not really high on either guy. Peak is so sloppy, but he's fun as hell. Yeah, he's a better athlete. Peak is a good athlete. I say he lands a haymaker in a back and forth sloppy war, and I say Peak knocks him out. I'll say he does in the second round.
Man, I know you're right, and I'm going the other way.
Know. There's no knowing in this fight who's right.
This is the worst kind of fight to pick as, an analyst, because whichever, if I'm wrong, I'm going to be super, super wrong. If I pick Yahya as a guy who he's been into the third round in 3 or 4 of his last 5 fights, he's been into the 5th round in 2 of them, just clearly has plenty of gas to go at a reasonably high pace for 5 rounds. Because I agree with you. His last fight in UAE Warriors was really close, and it was against a not very good fighter. His fight before that was actually a lot more impressive to me. But at the very least, he's proven that in a competitive, pretty high-paced fight, he has 3 or 5 rounds worth of cardio, where Peak demonstrably does not. So, but that doesn't matter if Peak knocks him out in 45 seconds. So if I pick Yahya and Peak knocks him out in 45 seconds, I feel like an idiot. If I pick Peak and he doesn't get the first round knockout and Yahya just drags him up and down the octagon for the last 9 minutes of the fight, then I look like an idiot for picking Peak. I can see the matchup of styles and tendencies and athletic gifts very clearly here, and it all just comes down to picking the right thing. I'm picking Yahya by decision here, and maybe even a decision where, buoyed by the crowd that is gonna go nuts for him, he's pounding on like an exhausted Peak in the 3rd round on the ground, and we have a 10-8 round, or a question of, can he get a finish in his UFC debut? So I'm going to pick Yahya to win at least the 2nd and 3rd rounds here, win the fight going away. But if I'm wrong, I'm going to know it real quick, because Peak's going to knock him the hell out quick. The top prelim at UFC 294 is a men's flyweight matchup between Tim Elliott and Muhammad Mokaev. Elliott, the 36-year-old Missouri native, is 19-12-1 overall. He is 8-10 across 2 separate stints with the UFC, but in his most recent run in the UFC, he is an even 6-6 since joining as the winner of the Ultimate Fighter Season 24, and therefore the automatic challenger to then flyweight king Demetrius Johnson. He acquitted himself admirably in a loss to Johnson, and again since then 6-6. He's on a 2-fight win streak, and in fact has won 4 of his last 5. But he comes into this fight off of wins over Tagir Ulanbekov and Victor Altamirano in his last 2. He will look to make it 3 in a row against one of the UFC's brightest, shiniest prospects and budding stars, Mokaev. 23-year-old Russian by way of England is 10-0 with 1 no contest overall. He is 4-0 in the UFC. He fought most recently back in March at UFC 286, where he tapped out Jafel Filho in the 3rd round of a fight that was, frankly, subject to a bit of controversy. Filho had him in all kinds of trouble on the ground, had him in a knee bar that, under the auspices of a more nervous ref, could have resulted in a technical submission right there. There's an open question over whether Mokaev actually did tap, and it went unnoticed by referee Herb Dean. Leaving that aside, Mokaev came back, gutted it out, won by 3rd round submission to leave no doubt in anybody's mind. Faced easily the sternest test of his career so far, and he's going to look to go 5-0 in the UFC, and he is heavily favored to do so. If I remember correctly, he is the biggest favorite on the card at -550, Elliott +400. Keith, I understand why Muhammad Mokaev is the favorite. He's yet to lose a fight, at least officially. He is a dazzling athlete. He's well-rounded.
Sure.
The hype helps a little bit. But things I learned in the Filio fight are that he can be put into trouble by a fighter who is tough enough not to go away and knows what he's doing on the ground.
Yeah.
Those things apply to Tim Elliott.
Yeah.
Very much so. And Tim Elliott, on top of all of that, has the secret card up his sleeve of being an unrepentant cheater. And I'm not saying that like he's just some repeat PED test failure guy. I think it's awesome. I think it's great that Elliott basically is indicting the system by saying, if I know I can get away with fence grabs and glove grabs, why wouldn't I do it?
Yeah. And he's not a Gina Mazzani cheater either.
We're talking
about bending the rules in the fight game.
Yeah. Like there is no, if you're not cheating, you're not trying in a marriage. Like that's
yeah. Yeah, say that to my wife. See how that goes.
Yeah.
See how that goes.
I mean, my brain says Chimaev is going to absolutely piece Elliott up on the feet. Like Elliott is capable of taking care of himself on the feet, but Chimaev is blindingly fast. He's going to actually be taller and longer. He throws a good diversity of strikes. I could just see him chewing Elliott's legs up with kicks that Elliott is too slow to react to, and then just going upstairs and just busting him with punches. Again, even though Elliott's got his guard up, I could see the speed differential being such that Chimaev is just, nailing him with the jab. I think when Chimaev wants this fight to go to the ground, he's going to be able to shoot, get in on Elliott's hips, and unless they're close enough for Elliott to grab the fence, take him for a ride. I think Chimaev's probably going to get his first takedown is going to be a big scoop and slam. But then that's where it gets dicey. Because if Chimaev has any faults right now, and it's tough to find fault in an undefeated fighter who's been blowing through almost everybody, but he's young. He gets overeager. He over pursues the finish on the ground and can lose position. He can sometimes overswing on the feet. Elliott may not be able to make him pay on the feet, but Elliott can make him pay on the ground. So even if I think Chimaev is going to cut Tim Elliott up on the feet and then slam him on the ground in the first 2 minutes of this fight, I think that's where it gets interesting. Even so, I mean, the chances that Elliott catches Chimaev in a bad mistake like Filio does and is actually able to finish him seem really slim to me. Elliott also is the kind of guy who's been able to win fights in the past by just kind of gutting it out and pulling ahead on a tired, discouraged opponent. But Chimaev has not shown that other sometimes flaw in young dynamic prospects, in that he seems to have the motor to go 3 rounds. Like he's gotten tired before, but he's not gotten so tired that other people have come back on him and made it very interesting. Like the only fight he's had where it looked like he might lose for a minute was in the middle of the fight, not the end. So give me Chimaev here. I'm as tough as Elliott is and as well as he, does on the ground. I'm going to say this goes to decision. Maybe Chimaev just completely lights him up on the feet and knocks him out early, but I'm going to say this goes to decision. And the most I want out of this is just to see if Tim Elliott makes this interesting and maybe teaches Chimaev a lesson in poise and composure that otherwise he's probably going to have to take his first loss to learn.
Yeah, that's a concern in this fight is, you have this super high prospect that people think could win a title one day, and I could also see this being a fight that he loses and doesn't change where he can go. It's just that loss on that guy's, the big star coming up record. It's always going to be on his record kind of thing. Like, oh, wow, man, when he lost to this guy. Yeah. We know what we're getting with Tim Elliott. And I'll say this about Tim Elliott. I said earlier about Jinh Frey being like one of these people that, you don't learn anything when you watch her and you're bored. Tim Elliott's one of these guys. I don't really learn anything about him anymore when I watch him. Like, I kind of know what I'm getting with Tim Elliott. But I'm never bored watching him. Like, the guy's fun as hell. He's an unorthodox fighter that uses a lot of movement to get his opponents guessing, very kind of like Dominic Cruz style, bob and weaving, keeps his hands down and he avoids strikes with rolling with punches, and kind of he avoids strikes by just not getting landed on clean. Really good volume. Usually he presses an ungodly pace. I mean, he throws a lot of looping hard hooks, but he lacks power. He's not going to start you kind of guy. He's good at wrestling. He's going to wrestle a lot, but he's unorthodox. He'll shoot on the hips and stuff, but he's more of a guy like he wants to catch a kick when you throw at him and take you down from there. He also likes to get in the clinch and hit a knee tap. He's very funky, kind of keep the hips moving, scrambling, gets in all these weird positions. He loves going the old, like getting a scramble going with the old school Peterson that, really should only work on youth wrestlers, maybe some junior high wrestlers. But he's a guy that he'll lose position to chase a submission. I've said this before that he'll find a way to lose, but that's also some of it is him. Like he's not a great athlete. He's one of these guys that, I feel like if Tim Elliott, if you took his style of fighting and made him middleweight, he'd be a top 10 guy. But because he's flyweight, that lack of athleticism in his age has always kind of put a ceiling onto what he can do. Mikhaev is a well-rounded fighter, high output striker. He's very technically sound. He sets up his attacks well with feints, quick hands, very slip and rip style. Just slips out of range and tags his foes with counters. I like that he works the body. He'll get in the pocket and he can really crack. And he's not even at the age where he's coming. He's not in his power years yet. He can get in the pocket. He likes to. He'll close the distance with doing some crazy stuff. Like he hit Cody Durham with his incredibly timed knee. He's a very good wrestler. I'd say he's a great wrestler. He's supposed to be hips with some good entries. We've seen him do suplexes in the UFC, but he needs to control more and stop rushing subs. I mean, go back to like the Malcolm Gordon fight, rode really high. The Fiallo fight, he lost positions, chasing things. He has a submission, so I don't want that to be buried. He's got 5 subs on his record, but he's slowed down in fights. He slowed down greatly late in the fight against Malcolm Gordon, even though he got a late submission. And then against Fiallo, he kind of took the entire second round off in their matchup so he can get enough cardio to win the third round, which is obviously a big concern, especially at flyweight and against someone like Tim Elliott. This is a really fun matchup. I love this matchup. I think it's going to be – I think we're going to have some really fun scrambles. You said, Tim Elliott's or Mikhail's like a 4-1 favorite over Elliott, almost 5-1 favorite over Elliott.
No. Minus 550.
Oh my God! I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
He is the biggest favorite on the card.
Like Tim Elliott should not be. No one should be a 5-1, 5.5-1 favorite over Tim Elliott. Like anybody, like the best in the world. Guys like Pantoja and Moreno and Figueiredo and Manel Cobb. Like I wouldn't.
You ready for this?
Good.
Tim Elliott. Well, okay. Demetrius Johnson was minus 900.
Oh yeah.
So okay, yeah, it was worse there, but yeah.
But you're talking about top 5 fighter in the world in the middle of his title reign, and Tim Elliott wasn't on the run that he is now. Like, yeah, he won the Ultimate Fighter show, but it wasn't like a guy. He proved that he's a borderline top 15-ish guy. Where I don't know where he ranks, but somewhere between like 9 and 17 or something. Yeah. So I have concern. Like I'd throw Tim Elliott in a bet if I'm willing, take a gamble on, on a fight. I would throw him in a DraftKings lineup. I'm assuming he, I don't play really DraftKings, but I'm assuming he's got, cost you the least. I mean, I understand how it works, but I'm still going to go. I'm going to go. Yeah, I'm always going to go with a 23-year-old over the guy soon to be 37. Yeah. I think Elliott is going to use his cardio, and I think he's going to make this a hell of a fight. I still, if it was a straight wrestling match, I would favor Mikhaev. On the feet, I favor Mikhaev, even though Tim Elliott's tricky. He's very tricky, and his styles is hard to adjust. I think this is going to be one of those ones. Another one, Mikhaev fight would be like almost 3 in a row, where it's much harder than the lines say. And I'm gonna see Mikhail wins. I'm gonna see him win by split decision. I think it's gonna be close. I think it's gonna be a war.
All right, I can't wait to see how it turns out, man. Because we both have Mikhail, but I think we see it playing out a little differently from each other. So yeah, definitely excited for this one.
If Mikhail runs through him, then the sky's the limit. Like, because no one runs through Tim Elliott.
No, I mean, again, Demetrius Johnson was a minus 900 favorite, but he knew he was in a fight.
Yeah, he lost the first round.
Yeah,
which back then was no one did that to
no one laid a finger on Demetrius Johnson. Yeah. The 5-fight main card of UFC 294 opens up with a high-stakes bantamweight matchup between Said Nurmagomedov and Muin Gafurov. Nurmagomedov, the 31-year-old Dagestani, is 17-3 overall. He is 6-2 in the UFC. He is coming in off of a loss. He dropped a unanimous decision back in March to Jonathan Martinez, who fought just this past weekend at UFC Vegas 81. That loss continues to age well for Nurmagomedov. Prior to that, he had been on a 4-fight win streak over increasingly stern competition, including Douglas Silva, de Andrade, and Said Yakub Kakramanov. So he will hope to get right back on the horse here, regain that momentum, and with his last name and haircut being what they are, never too far away from contention. Opposing him will be Gafurov, 27-year-old from Tajikistan, the other Tajik fighter in the UFC. He is 18-5 overall. He is 0-1 since joining the UFC as a veteran of the Contender Series, though he lost back on season 5 to Chad Anheliger. He is also the former LFA bantamweight champ, but he debuted in the UFC back at the Cara France versus Albazi card in June and dropped a unanimous decision to John Castaneda. He was stepping up on short notice there. He was in for Mateus Mendonça, but nonetheless came out on the wrong side of a unanimous decision. He's going to look to get back on track in his first regular full camp UFC fight. Not favored to do so. Nurmagomedov minus 230, Gafurov plus 185. Keith, I mean, we talked a little bit about Said Nurmagomedov just on our UFC Vegas 81 recap last night because we talked for a long time about Jonathan Martinez. Just for those who didn't listen to the recap, 1, shame on you, punch yourself in the face. 2, Keith, I'm going to tip this one to you, but you offered up something that said, despite his last name being Nurmagomedov, and I'll hand it to you.
He's not nearly as good as a wrestler as you think he should be. Now, he's good. Now, I want to be very clear. He can wrestle. He's not Habib. He's not Makhachev. He's not insert a whole bunch of other really high-level wrestlers.
If his name was Saeed Jones,
he's a plus. I think I said if his last name was Smith, you'd be like, yeah, he can wrestle. But we wouldn't be like, wouldn't be stunned when, Jonathan Martinez, stops a lot of his takedowns and stuff.
If he had some cornrows or a green mohawk instead of just the Dagestani foreguard and let it go out. Yeah,
that's right. I don't want to seem like I'm bashing him because he's still like, I don't know, top 20 guy in the weight, so he's really good. He's well-rounded. That's the thing, and Habib was never a really well-rounded fighter, but Makhachev is. But Makhachev, I still think, Habib's an overall more dominant fighter, but we're not going down that road. But he's a good striker. To me, like he's more that Russian striker that Alexander Slemenko, they can wrestle, but really it's just striking. He moves really well. He's technically sound. He likes to work from distance. He can explode when there is an opening. He kind of conserves energy, and then when there's an opening, that's when he explodes. He whips his punches in there. He's got some good power. I'd say like plus power. He does make the mistake of pulling his punches and leaning back a little, which was really surprising that he has the pop that he does because his technique isn't. I call him technically sound, but more of a technical sound with his kicks than his punches, because he's got a really big kicking game. Kicks to all areas of the body, great dexterity. He throws up like he loves question mark kicks, gets him up there, very like karate style. Like I've compared him to Stephen Thompson before in that sense, where he's really good at sneaking kicks behind his combos. He'll throw like a punch combination and then like end it with a high kick. Now, he's a good wrestler, so I want to stress that again. I'm not saying that he can't wrestle, but he's more of a funk style wrestler than, explode through your hips. He has a submission threat. He's got 5 subs on his record. But a concern I've had with him, and this is what's keeping him from being top 10, top 5 guy in the division, is he gassed a little bit. Like he gassed against Jonathan Martinez, and that likely cost him the fight in a really close matchup. Now he moves over to Gafurov. Gafurov's going to bring the fight to him. He's a pressure fighter. I mean, he fights at an insane pace, throws nonstop punches. He really sits on his punches to draw some power. He wings his overhand shots. He's winging left hook. He throws a lot of hard kicks, though he doesn't set him up so he's opening those counters. He throws some spinning attacks. He can wrestle. He's good at one of these guys at like following his wild strikes into an entry. When you look at his resume, you think he'd be even better wrestler. But he's a 2-time world champion in combat sambo. But he's it's kind of the same way I feel about Nurmagomedov. He's, and I know, and I've been accused of this before, and then I can be hard on wrestlers because I'm such a wrestling fan that I am constantly watching like the best guys in the world, and sometimes I might be a little unfair on some guys. So I understand I do that, but he's a good submission threat. He's got 7 subs. I've said it. His ground and pound is really good. I've described it similar to Fedor Emelianenko, where he just whips shots, and instead of your traditional, he just kind of throws wildly and he just waits a couple of them to hit. And he's got, for his style, I was so impressed with his cardio because he has a style you think it would only last about 2 minutes, but he doesn't. He goes hard. I love this fight. I'm a fan of Gafurov. His pressure and output can be a serious issue for Nurmagomedov. You said that Nurmagomedov is another big favorite. I think the odds are way off. I think this line should be closer. I would put it more. I mean, I definitely would have Nurmagomedov as the favorite based on the competition he's faced, but I'd put him at like negative 185. That said, so I want to take the upset in this one because I'm such a fan of Gafurov's style, but he's so much fun. I still can't make the upset pick. I'm not a Magomedov guy, but this is too much of a step up of competition. Too fast for a guy in Gafurov this soon in his UFC career. I think it's a back and forth contest, but the kicks and the edge in wrestling has me leaning towards Nurmagomedov. I'm gonna say Nurmagomedov by decision in a really close fight.
I like the breakdown there, and obviously, I was kind of teeing everything up for you to point out that Nurmagomedov's wrestling maybe gets a little overstated because his name is Nurmagomedov. But if he wins, and spoiler, I'm picking him to win as well, this might be a fight that makes his wrestling look like Khabib Nurmagomedov's. I love that you pointed out that despite Gafurov's background in Sambo, it hasn't translated to dominant groundwork in MMA in the way that it has for some other Sambo champs. And you need to look no further really than his losses. In his losses, when he lost to Chad Anheliger on the Contender Series, he was able to get some takedowns, but other times, even if he got the takedown, like Anheliger was able to threaten him down there. The ground was not a safe place for him. His 2 losses in one championship, like Bellingham was basically able to stay on the feet against him, and McLaren was able to get the better of him on the ground once they went there. Just every time I see Gafurov fight, I'm like, he's better than his losses, but he's yet to prove it. And the short notice debut against John Castaneda didn't help much because Castaneda beat him, and the whole time I'm going, man, I wonder if Gafurov wins this on a full camp. And so here he's on a full camp, and he's taking on a guy that's kind of a bad style matchup for him because Nurmagomedov is a good wrestler and a good grappler. and he's a rangier striker who will use his reach advantage to good advantage here. I have Nurmagomedov by decision in an entertaining fight here as well, but if Gafarov starts his UFC run 0-2, I haven't completely cut bait on him yet. I maintain that he's better than he looks, especially in his losses, and I may just be one of those. He may become one of those guys that he's like Jalgas Zhumagulov for me. Like, yeah, I know he's 1-5 in the UFC, but I swear, guys, he really is a borderline top 15 talent. It's just I'm gonna be.
Yeah,
I'm never.
Fair. Yeah.
The last people left on Zhumagulov's train are me and one of his wives. The other one's done with that shit.
A couple of other wives jumped off.
But yeah, give me Nurmagomedov by decision here as well. But unless he really, really runs through Gafarov, I maintain that Gafarov is a good fighter who just hasn't gotten his chance to shine yet. We head now to the middleweight division for a matchup between Ikram Aliskerov and short notice opponent Warley Alves. Aliskerov, the 30-year-old Dagestani, is 14-1 overall. He is 1-0 since joining the UFC out of the 6th season of Dana White's Contender Series. He debuted back in May at UFC 288, plunking Phil Hawes in 2 minutes, making a pretty sensational UFC debut, all things considered. He had been scheduled to face Nasruddin Imavov on Saturday in Abu Dhabi. Imavov withdrew basically about 3 weeks out from fight night and was replaced by Alves, the 32-year-old Brazilian who habitually competes at welterweight, is 14-6 overall. He is 8-6 since joining the UFC as the winner of the 3rd season of The Ultimate Fighter Brazil. He won the show at middleweight just because that's what they had, immediately dropped to welterweight, and as I say, he had gone 8-6. He was on a 2-fight losing streak, is on a 2-fight losing streak. He got knocked out by Jeremiah Wells all the way back in June of 2021, missed a year and a half with a variety of health issues, came back in January at UFC 283 and lost a split decision to Nicholas Dalby. Alves steps up here on short notice, up a weight class. The odds reflect that. Alves is plus 350, Aliskerov minus 450. Keith, I would have asked you questions about Aliskerov's overall upside at middleweight. Like, how quickly could this guy make a run into title contention if he trashes Imavov, or is Imavov right back there if Imavov stops this red hot prospect? Instead, I'm like, well, how much can we learn about Ikram Aliskerov if he crumples up a shop-worn welterweight who's on a 1-3 run? He crumples him into a little ball and tosses him halfway back to Brazil. I mean, tell me how you see this fight playing out, and assuming that you're taking Aliskerov, what could he do that would impress you here? What would you like to see?
Yeah, he's really in a tough situation because everything you said about Alves, he's so inconsistent. There's times he looks really good, but then there's the other times that he just looks like a shot fighter. There's no in between on him. He's a good athlete still. He moves well, but he hangs his hands really low. His hands aren't the quickest. He's a tough test. He'll rip the body. He has good power. He's constantly looking to land the perfect punch, though. He's trying to end the fight with one shot. Mean calf kicks. I mean, go back to Sergio Moraes fight and the Muna Lizez. Lizez is the fight that he looked really good in. He beat him up with leg kicks. He does well to use his strong and overpower. Use his strength and overpower his opponent in the clinch. He's a really good grappler, but he struggles to get the fight to the ground because he isn't a wrestler. He's a jiu-jitsu guy. He and even in times against Nickal Dalby, he wasn't even trying to get the fight to the ground, which is really surprising based on who he's going against, and that's being one of Dalby's weaknesses. He's a BJJ black belt. If he hits the ground, he's slick. He's got some slick back takes. He's got some mean ground and pound, but he's not he's a guy who has some credentials in BJJ, but he looks like he got submitted by Randy Brown. So I'm also really worried about his durability. I mean, Jeremiah Wells starched him, though that's what Jeremiah Wells does. And I don't think he can go hard 50 minutes. Like, he slowed down against Dalby. I mean, he really gassed and like did going back a little while, but against like James Krause. Aliskerov, I mean, he looks good. I mean, on the feet, he's a good boxer. He likes to get in the pocket, land some power shots, tight inside hooks, short, powerful shots. I mean, he's got serious power. I mean, he knocked out Phil Hawes. He still has a lot of defensive issues. He lacks head movements, being the biggest one. I like his kicking game, a lot of teep kicks, though he doesn't really check leg kicks. He's a very good wrestler. Nice reactionary double, good top game. He has a submission threat, a bit of like a Kimura specialist. He looks for that a lot. Very hard to take down. I mean, he fought Chimaev and was stopping takedowns with Chimaev. He was doing really well before Chimaev beat him in Starstum. This just feels like a, pass to the guard moment. Like, he was supposed to have a big test in Imavov, and that fell through, so they went with a next best thing. Okay, give him a veteran. I think Aliskerov is better than Alves everywhere, especially at this point in their careers. I don't trust Alves' chin at all. I think Aliskerov catches him. I think he puts him out early. I'll just say first, but I'll say second round. I'll say he knocks out Warriors in the second round.
I don't have much to add to that. I'm sad that Imavov fell off early enough that I didn't even start doing tape study for them, because I'd almost rather have been forced to invest the time, to analyze that fight, even if it fell off. Because here, I just pivot straight to, again, my usual question when there's a favorite this big. And the things that Alves does well, even if he is in as good a physical condition as he could be at this point in his career, just don't line up well with Aliskerov. You mentioned on the feet, his best weapon is his leg kicks, which, unsurprising. He's been a Pedro Hizo disciple for quite a few years now. And I do like that he'll go to work at somebody on the with leg kicks, and then once they start reacting to those, he'll use it to open up to, go to the body with kicks or go upstairs with punches. But that's not stuff that's going to work on Ikram Aliskerov. Like, he's going to get in like one leg kick before Aliskerov like clinches with him and throws him on the ground. On the ground, you mentioned he's a good grappler. He's a very good Brazilian jiu-jitsu artist, but if he goes to the ground with Aliskerov, I think it's because Aliskerov put him there, and it's going to be the time, place, and landing of Aliskerov's choosing. That makes the BJJ guy's job a lot harder. Yeah, I don't see any open avenues to victory here. And when you add to that the fact that Alves is going to be substantially smaller and hasn't shown good durability or cardio recently, this is going to be a wiping. You had Aliskerov by second round TKO. I'm not going to be different just for the sake of being different. I'm going to say it's a second round TKO for him as well, probably ground and pound.
Yeah, just to answer the question, like, what's Al's best chance of victory? I really see only two avenues. Like, I don't see him winning a decision. He still has some power. Maybe he lands the perfect shot, in which obviously everyone has the haymaker shot, but he's one of the guys, he's a little more likely. And I don't like the fight hits the ground. I don't see him like subbing him, but I can see him like catching a sub in a transition. Like, Aliskerov goes for a takedown and he just jumps on a guillotine.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But like the likeliness of him winning a decision, I think is very, very slim.
Extremely, especially considering that, again, he's almost certain to be the more tired guy in the third round. Yeah. Third from the top at UFC 294 is a light heavyweight matchup between Magomed Ankalaev and Johnny Walker. Ankalaev, the 31-year-old Dagestani, is 17-1-1 overall. He is 9-1-1 since joining the UFC about 5.5 years ago. He lost his UFC debut to Paul Craig with the original Paul fucking Craig buzzer beater triangle choke, then rattled off 9 straight wins to make it all the way to a title fight against Jan Blachowicz. That one ended in a controversial split draw. The UFC light heavyweight title remained vacant. In the wake of that draw, Ankalaev was pretty upset, said some things he clearly didn't mean in hindsight about maybe never fighting in the UFC again, or never fighting in the States again, or never fighting again. At any rate, he took a deep breath, got over it. He returns to action here 10.5 months later against Walker. Walker, 31-year-old Brazilian by way of Scotland, by way of Ireland, is 21-7 overall. He is 7-4 since joining the UFC out of the first season of Dana White's Contender Series. It has been a streaky and inconsistent run, to say the least, but he is on a 3-fight win streak right now, dating back a little over a year. Since his loss to subsequent champion Jamal Hill last February, he has a first-round submission of Iwan Cutelaba, a first-round knockout of Craig in their rematch, and a one-sided decision over Anthony Smith in May at UFC on ABC, Rosenstrike versus Almeida. Walker looking for his 4th win in a row. Ankalaev looking to get back in the win column. Ankalaev is a comfortable favorite. He's minus 360. Walker plus 270. Keith? I mean, who you got in this one?
I don't know if I want to take Ankalaev after he said he's not going to fight in the UFC anymore. It's like he reminds me of, like, I have a bunch of kids that are in my neighborhood. Like, they're like this, like, that's like one of my favorite things in the neighborhood. Like, there's 5 families all right here, and all the kids always play with each other and cook outs together. It's actually a really nice neighborhood. Like, the times I've heard the kids like fighting, and then like they'll be like my 8-year-old son and like the 8-year-old boy across the street be like, "I'm never playing with you again," and they like storm off. 10 minutes later, they're playing. Yeah. Let's take a life. I'm never coming here again. Then he comes back. You know. All right. Well, I'll start with Johnny Walker. I mean, he's this massive heavyweight. He's a fantastic athlete. You know, as good of an athlete there is in the division. Very explosive. He can be extremely aggressive, but lately he's been a lot more controlled. You know, when he's fighting, saving some of his energy, and it's made him a better fighter. Now, is it more pleasing to watch? No, but you know, when he's throwing his hands, he's got serious power. When he's being aggressive and wild man, he loves spinning attacks, flying knees, all this stuff that we love. But he came to the point where he realized that he could. It was kind of that like Justin Gaethje moment where it's like, yeah, that's all entertaining, and you know, Michelle Payne, the same thing. But I can actually be a contender if I slowed everything down and just fought to actually win instead of entertaining. Now he's been cracked before. I mean, I always think of that knockout Jamal Hill hit him with, where he, you know, like historically, like how he fell was like historically bad. I mean, Corey Anderson blasted him really bad. He's a weak offensive wrestler and defensive wrestler. I mean, he tries to stop takedowns very Travis Brown style, where he's, instead of sprawling, he just kind of trying to land, you know, the downward elbows, which obviously has some effect based on his size. And if he's on top, he has like clubbing ground and pound, just kind of like punches through people's guard. He did sub Iwan Cutelaba, but he was losing that fight. He was taken down. He gassed against Nikita Krylov, but to his credit, he was much better in his cardio against Anthony Smith. Ankalaev, he's a really big guy for the weight class. This has been the first time though he's not going to be the bigger guy. He's a southpaw. He's very technical. He marches down his foe with similar to like Sean Strickland does. Though he's a point fighter. He doesn't have the same output that Strickland has. I just mean like the way of like slowly taking ground. We should have said. Fantastic jab. He sets up his power shots behind his jab. He does defensively keep his chin a little too high for my liking for a guy who's really more of a technical striker. I'm surprised by that. I love his kicking game, though. Nice teep kicks, great push kicks. I mean, you go back to the Iwan Cutelaba fight, you see that like blazing fast high kicks. So great calf kicks. Now, he needs to learn how to check kicks, because in his last fight, Yablo has had a real success kicking his legs. But he's an intelligent fighter. They kill close the distance. He'll grind in the clinch. He will use his size to win the clinch, and he has zero issue like grinding the clinch and getting booed. He doesn't care about entertaining. He's the complete opposite of like early Johnny Walker was. He's good at like getting the clinch, using his head to kind of put himself in, grind and use the position and wear on him. He will drop down in the legs, good top control, smothers his opponent. He has really strong takedown defense. We try to take him down, but he's not much of a submission threat. Now, I'm very confident in Ankalaev here. I mean, I agree with the betting lines. He's a better technical striker. He is a better wrestler. I think he weathers the early storm from Walker and just jazz him up in this like ho-hum type fight. Give me Ankalaev by decision.
Yeah, if I sent this fight over to you with a question, it would have been, does it look like a Magomed Ankalaev fight or a Johnny Walker fight? And you kind of answered it there.
Yeah.
Because even the new mellower Johnny Walker, and I agree that he's mellowed kind of like Michel Pereira. They very obvious analog between the two, where they were complete wild men, lost some fights as a direct result of that wildness. And since then, they've toned it down just enough. They're still top echelon, most aggressive guys in their divisions, but it's a little more reasonable now. Even so, like even the new Johnny Walker, the contrast with Ankalaev, who is one of the more conservative fighters in the division, I think. He's obviously he very famously has that last second loss to Paul Craig, but other than that, his game is sort of built to avoid situations like that at all cost. He plays straight to his strengths. He does not seem to give a solitary crap whether his wins are entertaining or not. We're talking about a guy that has 2 wins by head kick in his first 5 UFC fights. And then, including, the one he put down Dalsha with, like the front kick where he just put the ball of his foot like right on his jaw, was a work of art. But he's also perfectly happy to just put on the most grueling, grinding clinch fest against the cage. I imagine he's going to go for as much of that as possible against Walker. Walker, when he is pressed to the cage, doesn't have much of a game plan. It all works off of him just leveraging his incredible size and strength. Like, his offense is effective in clinches against defense just because he's so big and it's so easy for him to knee people in the chest and even the jaw. You mentioned his takedown defense is more trying to knock somebody out on the way down. I think Ankalaev's patience and relative size, like Walker's bigger than Ankalaev, but it's going to be a lot closer than it is in the average Johnny Walker fight. I think it's going to frustrate Walker, and I think it's going to wear Walker down. Walker, generally speaking, has had decent cardio since his strategic adjustments, but not like Ankalaev type cardio. Yeah, I've got Ankalaev here as well. Walker is dangerous. He could certainly plunk Ankalaev with something. There's always the chance that a couple of those Travis Brown elbows or some kind of hammer fists during a takedown attempt, legal or not, shout out Ryan Spann, actually put Ankalaev in trouble. But that just seems like the outside chance. This is going to be a Magomed Ankalaev fight. Give me Ankalaev to frustrate Walker in the clinch, stifle his long kicking offense by just staying stuck to him for 15 minutes, maybe get a couple of opportune takedowns where Walker's able to get back up by kind of scooting back to the fence and standing back up, but it eats up 2 minutes of a round where he's definitely losing. Yeah, just give me Walker to drop a unanimous decision here in a fight that takes a little bit of air out of the arena before we get on to the real attractions. That brings us to the co-main event of UFC 294 on Saturday in Abu Dhabi. It is a middleweight matchup that we have now been told is explicitly a title eliminator between former welterweight champ Kamaru Usman and Uber prospect Khamzat Chimaev. Keith gave a little look of surprise there. That was announced within the last 24 hours of when we're recording. That's weekend news. Let's talk about Usman first. 36-year-old Nigerian by way of now South Florida is 20-3 overall. He is 15-2 since joining the UFC out of the 21st season of The Ultimate Fighter. He, of course, very famously won his first 15 fights in the UFC, minting himself at least in the argument for the greatest welterweight of all time, at least on the long list, if not the short list, for the most accomplished fighters of all time, period, before running into Leon Edwards, suffering back-to-back losses to Edwards last August at UFC 288 by fifth-round head kick in a fight he had been winning handily, and then in March, in their rematch, losing by majority decision in a fight which seemed much more conventionally to be a win for Edwards. Usman steps in here on short notice for Paulo Costa, whom I'll talk about more in just a second, to face Chimaev. 29-year-old Chechen by way of Sweden is a perfect 12-0 as a professional. He is a perfect 6-0 since joining the UFC about 3.5 years ago. 6-0 in the UFC. He is 3-0 above welterweight. Let's put it that way. He has 3 fights at welterweight, 2 planned middleweight fights, and then of course his most recent octagon appearance was at UFC 277 last September, where he single-handedly flipped the card on its head by blowing weight by 9 pounds, dropping out of a scheduled matchup with Nate Diaz, getting Kevin Holland again on 1 day's notice. He ran right through Holland, seemed unrepentant about the weight miss, has been on the shelf ever since then. Here he comes back with a chance to probably redeem himself in the eyes of the notoriously short-memoried MMA fan community. He had been scheduled, as I said, to fight Costa. Costa dropped out officially on the 11th, so Usman comes in on 10 days' notice. Chimaev is a comfortable favorite. He's minus 260. Usman is plus 210. I'll talk about this one first. First, a moment for Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa I think he may be the UFC's now all-time greatest supplier of unintentional comedy. There are times when he's trying to be funny and it doesn't work, and there are times when he's just kind of being regular and it is hilarious. And here, just on the 9th of October, Sherdog gets an exclusive through Marcelo Alonso where we post a picture of him with a huge blown up staph elbow saying, "Hey, I had surgery pretty recently for staph, but I'm totally fighting at UFC 294. 2 days later on the 11th, he's out. We all knew he was going to be out. Why blow up your own spot that way, Paula? He is something. He's either the smartest guy or the dumbest guy in the UFC, or he may just flip a coin each morning to decide which he wants to be.
He might not even know he's out.
Yeah, like he's the I fought Israel Adesanya with a red wine hangover. I fired Waleed Ismail, and now my girlfriend's going to be my manager. He's Mike Perry with slightly worse English.
Yeah. There's one person I would throw in there who's really funny without intentionally being, that might give Paulo Costa a run for his money, and that would be Tito Ortiz.
Tito's the only other one I can think of.
Tito gets some freaking. Shout out to my boy Kyle from the Loudmouth MMA. We did a lot of shows. We used to message each other with just stupid shit Tito Ortiz would say to each other. So the great Kyle Steele over there. Yeah. But
it's totally the same thing, because Tito was always a terrible trash talker. When he tried to say cool shit, it fell flat, but he would just unintentionally, like, you're the greatest light heavyweight on the night. I cracked my C47 vertebrae. That stuff.
I still think my favorite one is when he said, like why he should, I don't know who he was going to fight. And he was talking about, it must have been a Chuck Liddell. It was a rematch. And it was like, well, I'm bigger now. I'm stronger now. I'm younger. Younger. What
a treasure. Like Tito's greatest moment of trash talk didn't involve any words. His greatest moment of trash talk was when Shamrock tried to cut a promo on him, and he just laughed, and Shamrock got so mad he threw the chair. Yeah. Like, that was the perfect, do that, Tito. Don't say any words.
Yeah.
Just let Ken Shamrock show his ass, and then you laugh. Yeah, that's yeah. Tito just needed the who the fuck is this guy card from Conor about 15 years before. Yeah. Anyway, if this fight had been booked a year ago, right after the Holland fight, right after the first Usman Edwards fight, say they booked this at 185 pounds last December, I'm picking Usman.
Usman's the favorite too.
No. Yeah. Usman is the favorite going into it. If they fight then.
Now he's a 3-1 underdog. Almost a 3-1.
Chimaev is minus 260. And because, again, a year ago, okay, Usman, he was Kamaru Usman, and then he ran into a head kick for the ages. That's a bad loss, but he's still Kamaru Usman. And Chimaev, Chimaev blew weight, ran through Holland, who, Chimaev is a superior fighter anyway, but even in the specifics of the style matchup, terrible style matchup for Holland. I would have picked Usman over Chimaev a year ago. What turns all this on a dime for me is the second Usman Edwards fight, where Usman all of a sudden overnight looked old. The guys hobbling around during fight week. We're getting word from where was that one? Oh, it was in London. We're getting word from the ground during fight week that Usman is like walking backwards upstairs. His knees are so bad. And that could all just be art of war disinformation stuff, except in the cage, all of a sudden he's tentative. All of a sudden the takedowns aren't there. The footwork isn't quite there. He's just inert. He gets outworked by Edwards. He gets outstruck and out-wrestled for 5 rounds. Old Usman has harder sledding against Chimaev, because otherwise, Khamzat Chimaev is a Titanic welterweight, was a Titanic welterweight. Now he's just a decent sized middleweight, but so was Usman. That was the crazy thing for the longest time. Like, how does Usman cut this much weight, wrestle this hard, push this kind of pace, and still have 5 rounds of cardio? It seemed inhuman. And even though Chimaev is taller than Usman, I won't be surprised if Usman has the range advantage in the, has the range advantage in the cage on Saturday. So my thought, again, before the second Edwards fight would have been, Chimaev is incredibly explosive. He hits with a ton of power, but he's also pretty undisciplined as a striker. He's still kind of depends on just overwhelming people who are scared and can't deal with the speed and with the power. And I could see Usman just feeding him that nasty jab all night. I could see Chimaev not having an easy time getting Usman down to the canvas. I could see Usman taking Chimaev down. All that kind of goes by the wayside here. I don't know what kind of physical condition Usman's going to be in. And that's just talking about his health. And then talking about, he steps in here, he did not have another fight scheduled. I'm right on that, right? He didn't, he was just on the shelf.
Nope.
So I don't know personally whether he was just in kind of general rehab, get feeling better mode. I don't know if he was out with Nate Diaz on a boat in the, off of Tijuana drinking tequila. I don't know. My guess would be that Usman is the kind of guy who's in pretty damn good shape all the time. But I'm not dead sure he's going to be better physically than he was against Edwards. And if he is better, he's still now halfway to 37. I can't imagine him being better than he was for the first Edwards fight. Whereas Chimaev, he's still just 29 years old. He's had a full year off, and he's at a camp that all of a sudden is very busy with UFC level fighters. I mean, we've seen him in corners in the UFC and Bellator numerous times over the last year. I have the feeling that Chimaev is probably going to be at least as sharp and at least as strong as he was in his last fight. He's coming into a fight that he has known from the beginning was going to be at 185 pounds. Yeah, I've got Chimaev in this one. A lot of Usman's, like, the danger he presents starts from his wrestling, comes from the threat that he might try to take you down. Certainly, it never entered into the realm of anyone's possibility that his opponents were going to be taking him down until very recently. I think Chimaev is getting Usman easily the best name he's fought so far at just the right time. I think this is going to be kind of his time to shine. I wouldn't be surprised if we see things happen to Kamaru Usman on Saturday that we've never seen before. I could see Usman doing fantastic with his defensive wrestling for X number of rounds, say 1, 2, 3 rounds, and be like, wow, the wrestling's really been a push here. Like, the guys are 0-2 and 0-2 in takedowns, and then Chimaev gets in on his hips the right way, and Usman goes for a ride in a way we've never seen before. From there, Usman is generally well capable of taking care of himself on the ground. But how many times have we seen Kamaru Usman work from bottom position from a guy that had ground and pound and submissions? Like,
never.
Yeah, none ever. Let alone someone who's at least as strong as he is.
I mean, like, isn't Leon Edwards the only person to officially take him down?
I believe so. Yeah.
So Colby Covington did take him down.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Colby.
They didn't give Covington the official takedown.
And DC was like, had this whole big argument about it.
It's like that's a takedown. But regardless.
Yeah, DC, you know enough about MMA and wrestling not to go down this route. Don't do it. You should be the one correcting people on this. Anyway, well, I mean, yeah, man, I've got Chimaev in this one. I've got him big time. I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic about Chimaev as a future contender / champion at middleweight. I mean, when he makes it to the cage, he's blown through just about everybody he's faced. Gilbert Burns gave him a fight, and that's about the best you can say for his UFC run so far. Again, Usman just a year and a half, 2 years ago, at the very least, gives him the fight of his life. And again, off the cuff, I probably would have picked him, but here, I can't be confident that that's the Kamaru Usman we get. I think Chimaev makes a statement here. Give me Chimaev. I'm going to say 3rd round submission, and it's a mercy tap submission where Usman's been down on the canvas, probably ended one of the first 2 rounds in survival mode at the horn, and in the 3rd round, maybe he just goes down too early. Chimaev has too much time to work, pounds on him, taps him out with a rear naked choke. Dominant work for Khamzat Chimaev.
Yeah. One question mark I have about this fight is, being that it's a 3-round fight, it's a co-main event, would have Usman have taken it if it was a 5-round fight? Obviously, we don't know. And
for all we know, it was presented, would you rather have a 3 or 5-round fight? And it was like 3.
Yeah. I mean, again, we don't know if it was presented or anything like that, but I just curious. I wish I knew that. You mentioned Chimaev. You said optimistic if him could make a title run or anything. If he fought Sean Strickland right now, that fight got booked, wouldn't he be the favorite?
Yes. Even
though Strickland just beat Izzy Adesanya, beat him. He won all 5 rounds, didn't he?
Yeah.
He won all 5.
He
liked
won.
Him.
He won all 5 rounds, and you know what? There's a chance Chimaev would have been favored over Adesanya as well.
Yeah, there is. I'm just saying, like, that's how it's funny. This is a fantastic fight. I think it's much better than the Paulo Costa fight. The only better option would have been if they called up Bo Nickal. But
I'm glad that Chimaev might actually get a chance to pose with the belt for a couple pictures before the Bo Nickal era starts.
So obviously I'm joking, but I'll say this about Kamaru Usman. I mean, I do think the odds are I have a lot of concerns about Kamaru Usman, like you have, and that said, like, the odds are extremely disrespectful. You take his last 2 fights, obviously they're both losses, but he was a minute and a half, 2 minutes away from beating Leon Edwards the first time.
Mm-hmm.
was
in a way that Edwards never would have gotten a rematch.
No.
Yeah.
And then in the rematch, I just went there and made decisions, and there was 32 scorecards. And all the stuff you said was true. And two media members still scored the fight for Kamaru Usman. And I know that's not good, a 2 out of 32. I understand that, but 11 of them scored at a draw. One of the official scorers scored at a draw. Mm-hmm. And then, 19 went for Edwards. So, the majority is saying Edwards won, or at least I think didn't he get a point deducted? I can't remember. He did something, right? He got deducted. Right?
Give me just a second.
Yeah, he got a point deducted. I can't remember. I think he grabbed the cage or something, or he did something. I can't remember. I apologize for not remembering.
Yeah, third round, Edwards grabbed the fence too many times trying to stop a takedown, so it ended up being 10-8 round for Usman.
Yeah, and Usman gets a takedown. Who knows what happens? But my point is, especially it's Kamaru Usman. That's his game. Even I'm not saying he stops him, but maybe he wears on him enough and it changes the rest of the fight. The point is, and I understand. I'm not getting on you, but just the general public and the odds and everything is dogging Kamaru Usman, and he was just drew with a lot of people think he won a scorecard against the current champion. A lot of people thought it should have been a draw. Some people thought he should have won. So one thing about that I don't think will be an issue for Kamaru Usman is moving up to middleweight. Like, being undersized will not be an issue. I mean, he's a big guy. It might be something that prolongs his career a little bit. He's a long and lengthy guy. A concern I have, and you hit this, and again, it's a concern I have to a scale. It's not like, wow, it's completely faded, but if he was if this was a matting rating, I don't know. I don't play the UFC game, but I'm assuming they have ratings. Mm-hmm. If in his prime he was a 98, maybe it's a 92 now. So I'm a little concerned in these areas. But he's still one of the best in the world. Who, if he won the title, especially at welterweight again, I think it wouldn't shock me. No. Let me ask you this question: if Kamaru Usman fought Chimaev, we talked about Chimaev, who'd be the favorite?
Probably Strickland, but not by much. Yeah. Very close.
Yeah. Against the current champion in the weight class he's moving up to. So, Mike.
I mean, as much as we're arguing that Usman may have been fading, he's still not at you're going to beat me with just a jab territory.
Yeah, exactly. So the one concern I have about him is he used to be a big volume guy on the feet. Mm. And that has really lowered in back-to-back fights against Leon Edwards. Even the one that he was winning, his output wasn't really insane. Now, he uses his long arm well to keep his opponents kind of at the end of his strikes. He works behind one of the best jabs in the game. His straight right is really good. He's really good at winging his power shots. Going to the body has been would be a really wise decision of Usman to do against Chimaev because it's been a really big weapon for him. And we've seen Chimaev, it was a really high pace against Gilbert's, but we just seen him slow down a little bit. He does have big power, and I expected to go even bigger at middleweight because you look at Usman, you knew he was cutting a lot of weight. He knocked out Colby Covington. He knocked out Gilbert Burns. His incredible walk-off knockout of Jorge Masvidal in their rematch. He still got some good, teep kicks. I'm concerned about his durability. He's been in so many wars. He's been in so many 25-minute fights. He's 36, but, we talked about guys, we talked about Charles Oliveira being old for his age. He's an old 36. Yeah. He's had tons of injuries. Even guys that, Edwards hurt him a little bit, but Colby Covington buckled him a couple of times. And Colby Covington's not known. Say what you want about Colby. He's not known for his punching power.
No. And Covington, it feels like hit him 300 times between their two fights.
Which you wonder what have that done, and the weight cutting and also the years of wrestling that drains on your body. Mm-hmm. Now he's extremely strong and he uses it really well in the grappling department. I always go to the example. It's been my notes for a while. When he fought RDA, and RDA was going for Kimura, and he just easily just ripped his arm out. Like he did the worst technique and just was like, "I'm strong with you. I'm just gonna like pick you up with my the one arm you're attacking." In the grappling, he has a very like uses those arms well. He'll shoot and drive through the hips, but he's more likely to like get in close and just snatch single you. Yep. He's also good at catching kicks. I mean, he did it to Masvidal when he threw kicks. If he doesn't get you down, he would push you against the cage and smother you there. And it's really his best position, just being chest to chest. We've said it before. I've described it as just must be being held to be pushed against the cage with a really strong guy like Usman, just punching you in the ribs over and over again. And that's what he did to RDA. That's what he did to Tyron Woodley.
Dude, let me interject real quick. Masvidal really criticized / complained / made fun of Usman for spending so much time in their first fight just pressing him into the cage and stomping on his feet. And a lot of fans, I guess, hopefully unthinkingly went along with that. Dude, if you thought that was lame, have somebody do that to you sometime. Yeah. For 30 seconds.
What Masvidal was doing was, when in a rematch, I don't want to be in that position. I'll talk shit and make it seem like it's boring when that sucked and I couldn't do anything offensively. He was hitting me. It was hurting me, and not hurting me enough to finish me, but hurting me enough to, I'm going to feel the rest of the week, and I'm going to lose the fight on top of it.
Yeah.
So, one thing that Usman also been successful in his wrestling is a mindset where he isn't necessarily about getting the opponent down in his first fight. It's more about getting into a position where he can have an advantage and never let you rest and frustrate you when he does get you down. And when you get up to your feet, he pops you right back down a second time and a third time. The problem is, you go back to his fight with Edwards, that wasn't there. Like, he struggled. Now, again, he got the third round was the best round for him, and he grabbed the cage, and who knows. It just makes me wonder if he can still compete at a high level of wrestling. Now, when he gets on top, he's good top control, good at working the guy up to his feet, knowing not just, hold on single, beat him up as he gets up to his feet, stomp on his foot, elbow him, hit him with your shoulder, just keep making him, hit him in every position, making him work. And he's always had one of the best cardios. And even though he's been out, I mean, I'd be surprised he gassed. I don't know what his training camp or anything like, but if he gassed over 15 minutes. Now, Chimaev, the thing that stands out to me is just how well-rounded. I mean, he's back up to middleweight, but he's a big middleweight, which is ironic because I think he used to be a welterweight. I've said this before about him, and the way he strikes, he's fearless. He just walks down his opponents. I mean, you watch how he just fought Gilbert Burns, just walked him right down. He throws hard, fast shots straight down the pipe. He has massive power. He threw Gilbert Burns. He threw Reese McKee like a child. Incredible wrestler, really fast entries, chains takedown attempts together so well. I love how he got a takedown on Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland was like Graham Durrell, and he just rolled with it, followed the hips, smothering top control. He's like Khabib in that the Dagestani handcuff. He grabs that and just slowly works a position and then ground and pounds you out. He's got a big submission game that he doesn't get talked about. He's got 5 subs. I mean, Holland, who's not a bad grappler himself, in a sick Darce choke, which he adjusted like 8 times in the fight. I want to warn the people who are writing Usman off because of, we've done that with guys. We started doing the eulogy and not realizing, no, he's just the second best guy in the world. I mean, we did it with Max Holloway. Max Holloway when he's going against Calvin Kattar, and we're like, oh yeah, he's all done. He's done being a top guy. And I was saying we as in the entire MMA community, and I'm not talking about every individual person, but I mean just a general consensus. That said, I'm feeling pretty confident in Chimaev too. He's fast. He's big. He hits hard. He's a super good wrestler, and he's only 29 years old. My issue is that Usman does so well as grind, mentally break his opponents. And at 36, I don't know if he can. Usman always, not the way he strikes, but the way he wrestled, the way he kind of reminded me of a more skilled Matt Hughes in where on paper he's not the greatest wrestler. I mean, I know Matt Hughes was like a 4-time All-American, so I'm not obviously that's incredible, but you know what I mean? Like wasn't Olympic caliber, wasn't on the world team, wasn't what DC did, but he understood MMA wrestling and he understood how to crush your spirit. But unfortunately, like Hughes, that eventually faded, and it faded fast.
Yeah,
and I just think Chimaev might be too fast for him. And I think I'm with you. Like you said, you think we're going to see Usman in a position we've never seen him before. I mean, obviously, Leon Edwards did that with a high kick, but I think we get another one of those holy shit moments. I think Chimaev starches him. I'm going to say he does it. I'm going to say he does it in the second round. I'm going to say the durability of Usman's not there anymore. And I say Chimaev knocks him out in the second round.
All right. I mean, last question. Say Usman has a great first round, like he's clearly watched the tape,
sure,
takes it to Chimaev, maybe shakes off a Chimaev takedown and ends up on top, like spins, takes his back. Chimaev's in trouble. Usman won the first round. Is Chimaev shook at the end of that round?
He could be because he's never lost a round, even against Gilbert Burns. He might have lost a round. I don't remember. I mean, you're going back a while, but he was very. I remember him coming out early stop, and he could be. He could be. That's a good question. And the one concern I have is Usman outmuscles people. I don't know if he can outmuscle Chimaev.
That's very fair.
And if he can he do it for long periods of time?
Yeah.
Like he might be able to outmuscle him for a minute against the cage, but can he do it for 3 minutes of the round?
Because in those situations, normally the other guy is the one getting tired faster because it's hard for a welterweight just to even.
That is the avenue of victory of him. If he can slow Chimaev down, turn it into a chest versus chest, upper body, slapping titties kind of thing, grind on him, foot stomp him, like he could win. He could win a fight like that. Yeah.
Frustrate and see if he makes a mistake. Yeah. I mean, for a fight that we're both pretty comfortable with one guy winning and that guy's a 2.5 to 1 favorite, I can't wait to see this.
But if he beats Chimaev, after we kind of writing him off and putting eulogy, if he beats Chimaev,
he's fighting for a title next.
Yeah, and I'm probably picking him over Strickland. So that's the crazy world of it. It's like one extreme to the other. Either you're fighting for the title and you're the next best thing in the division, or you're done. There's no middle ground.
That's it. With that, we come to the main event of UFC 294. A rematch for the UFC lightweight title between reigning champ Islam Makhachev and reigning featherweight champ Alexander Volkanovski, who made his first unsuccessful attempt to become a 2-division champ back at UFC 284 in February. Makhachev, of course, had been scheduled to rematch Charles Oliveira, the man from whom he took the title. Oliveira was forced out of the fight on October 10th, so just 11 days' notice. The former featherweight champ steps up. We've talked exhaustively about it during the intro. Just his balls can barely make featherweight by themselves. But here we have the rematch. Makhachev, 31 years old, 24-1 overall, 13-1 in the UFC. He is, of course, the lightweight champ. He's won 12 fights in a row. Volkanovski, 35-year-old Australian, 26-2 overall. He now is also 13-1 in the UFC. Unlike Makhachev, he has fought since their first meeting. They fought in February. Makhachev has been on the shelf ever since. Volkanovski came back in July facing challenger Yair Rodriguez, put him away in the third round in a fantastic, consummate performance against one of the most dangerous offensive fighters in the entire sport. So Volkanovski has that little bit of momentum coming into this fight. The odds here, unsurprisingly, favor Makhachev. He is minus 250. Volkanovski plus 205 or plus 210 on the comeback. Worth noting that their first fight in February, Makhachev entered the cage as minus 350. So Volkanovski's performance in their first fight, as well as perhaps the win over Rodriguez, has bought him a little bit of goodwill from the bettors. Keith, I'm going to flip this one to you first, but I want to ask you a question, because obviously anytime we get a rematch that's immediate or near immediate, especially between two great fighters, we know what the outcome of the first fight was, And so it's very easy to go, okay, who had more that they could go back to the drawing board and work on? Who had things that they can circle and say, if not for blank, the fight might have been different. Or in the case of Makhachev, the fight might have been more unambiguously a win for me, since, again, 20 or 25% of media viewers actually scored it for Volkanovski, and I think 1 or 2 scored it a draw. Let me ask you this. You've probably... I mean, I know you watched their first fight because you and I talked about it right afterwards, and I imagine you've watched it more recently since.
Yeah.
Name me a big mistake either guy made in that fight.
Volkanovski's biggest mistake was. Well, that's a good. I wasn't prepared for that. That's a good question. I mean, I'm trying to not go with a super obvious answer, which is at one point he got his back taken. He's got to pop right to his feet. Like there was times where he hit the ground and he was popping right back up, and it was almost like the takedown from Makhachev was a negative that he took him down, because he took him down and I got right back up. He's got to treat it like the floor is lava. The U.S. had all this energy, and you can't hold me down. You can't keep me down. And there was times, and I know it's so much easier said than done. Like trust me, I've wrestled.
When Islam Makhachev takes you down, you got to pop right back up, man.
Yeah. I'm like, if I Volkanovski watched it, I'm like, oh, okay. Why did I think of that? So it's got to be more frantic. It's got to be, he can't give an inch. Like there was one point where he remember he. I'm trying to remember because I have also watched. I did watch the fight, but I also watched like 1,000 other fights of other people, a lot of like UFC newcomers, to try to do the prelims. But he made a mistake. Remember, Makhachev took his back when he made a mistake. I forgot what he did. He got lazy for a second. So that's just like he can't lose concentration at any moment. And Makhachev, I really don't think he fought bad. Like obviously he won. He got caught late. And I mean that's gonna happen. I think he should have used his kicks more. He's got a really good kicking game. I mean, he did kick a lot, but like pushing him back with the kicks and bullying him back to the fence with his kicks, and cutting the cage off more on him. And he did that well, but like cutting the cage more so Volkanovski can't move. I smother him more. Don't give him any time to really work at distance. Don't get in his groove, because he's when Volkanovski gets in his groove, he's really hard to handle. So those are probably the two things I like to. I wish I watched it right now, and with that question in my mind, I think I could have found something better.
Okay, well, I mean, one of the reasons I asked was that I had a tough time finding the worst mistake. I agree that Volkanovski's worst mistake was not having more of a sense of urgency to get back up in the 4th round when he was taken down. He spent most of that round with Makhachev on his back, and even though he had a great 5th round and I mean unquestionably won the 5th round, it put him in too deep of a hole. That's that was about it. He fought pretty close to a perfect fight.
Yeah, he's got to battle every minute of the round. Every minute of every round, he's got to have in his mind, I'm not going to give up a minute.
Yeah. Makhachev has to be good. Volkanovski has to be almost perfect.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
All right. Tell me how you see this fight. How you think it'll play out, who wins.
Yeah, I'm so freaking excited. What a good fight. Islam Makhachev is a phenomenal fighter. Southpaw, who is a very good athlete, doesn't get spoken about how well he moves. He moves well, fast hands, accurate, technically sound. He's constantly winning the outside leg battle, where he's lining up his feet. I should say foot battle, where he's lining up his feet well, and he was even doing it against Volkanovski, just because of who has great footwork, which is hard to do, to line up his power shots. He's a pocket boxer who is really good in that mid range. Sets up his shots with feints well. I mean, he blasted Charles Oliveira with a beautiful right hook. His feedback left hand is incredible. If you overextend, he fades back just enough to come back in with that left hand. Good kicks, lands kicks to all areas of the body. Good inside. He gets in there. He will grind away. He's a master in there. it's his best position. Get to give Volkanovski his defense, use that massive size advantage, the wrestling advantage, wear on him. Some really strong, dirty boxing. Very good wrestler, obviously. Upper body takedowns and good in. Well, he also is good. Not just upper body, but just like a slide by, winning like inches here and there. Great entries. Very similar to Khabib, where he doesn't explode through your hips. He just gets you with a single or a double, and then he works an angle slowly. Doesn't rush anything. Chains well together, wins scrambles, and I just said it, but the grappling was very, it seemed like it was very equal at times, but other than when he was dropped in the fifth, he was always in the little control of winning the battles. Yeah. He's got long arms where he can just kind of grab a limb, which was so hard to defend him. His takedown defense is rock solid. Good control. Volkanovski got up a lot, but it took everything in him to get up there, work back to his feet, and you're working on him. He suffocates his opponents with just the pressure and the mentality, squeezes their cardio out of them. Good if he gets you down, like I said with Volkanovski, he's got to pop right up, because if not, he's going to dispatch some hard ground and pound. He battered Bobby Green. He batted Charles Oliveira from on top. He's a slick grappler, good back takes. He's a legitimate submission threat. I mean, he subbed Dan Hooker. He subbed. He made Thiago Moises look like a bum, and that's a good grappler. He submitted Charles Oliveira, who's got the most submission wins in UFC history. Alex Volkanovski, short, compact fighter, the best footwork in MMA, constantly cutting the smallest little angles, great at changing up the angles, great at using lateral movement. He's so good at getting his opponents guessing when he's going to attack, his rhythm. He uses feints well. He uses his upper body, his shoulders, his hands, just really, really intelligent fighter. He sets traps and picks up his opponent's timing really well. You don't think of him as a pressure fighter, and I've said this before, and I want to use this analogy again. He's not the guy, doing 100 on the freeway. He's the guy doing 80, where the state trooper is it's not catching his eye when they zoom by him, but you do 80 for a long time, you made some good miles, and that's how he fights. He's good at landing a shot, slipping away from the counter, and landing back with a follow-up. So he's really good at being 1 and 3. He's fast. He's fast, especially in the division. He switches combos in mid combination, which I love. He did so well. Go back to the Max Holloway fight. I mean, all of them, but I believe it was the third. No, I think it was the first fight. The very first fight, he was grabbing the hand so well and using it. He kind of like this tug of war battle to get inside and land shots on the longer fighter. That's something he might be able to do a little bit with Makhachev. A great jab, so much variety in striking. He just always throwing combinations, never attacking with the same combo, getting his opponents guessing. Works the body well. Underrated kicking game, thudding kicks. I mean, I think it was the third Holloway? I'm making all three of them up, and I apologize. With the third Holloway fight, we just beat him up with calf kicks.
I feel like it's the third, but they all run together for me. They all run
together, yeah. I know the second one was the only one competitive. The third one was the least competitive one. Mm-hmm. What I love about Max Holloway, absolutely. I mean, Alex Volkanovski, particularly against Max Holloway, and he's done it in other fights. He will kick, and obviously he has those calf kicks to do damage. But he'll kick to get a reaction, or even to he'll throw an inside kick to move his opponent into position for him to land a straight shot followed up. To line up his punches. He lines up his punches with his kicking game when he throws a combination. It's absolutely incredible. He will throw these flip kicks out there just to kind of keep his opponents. He does this I call them flip kicks. They're not really teep kicks. Just kind of throw them out there to keep his opponent's distance. We used to say the weakness about him was that he wasn't a power puncher, but then he flattened Makhachev, almost knocked him out. I mean, it was close. He hurt him. He had him hurt. He had him bad. He's an underrated offensive wrestler, though I don't expect to see his offensive wrestling in this fight. But he's a good wrestler, explode through the hips kind of guy. Freakishly strong, but he's built like a fire engine. Fire hydrant, I should say. Excuse me. He grabs a leg and you go for a ride. Despite getting taken down by a bigger and more technical guy like Makhachev, I mean, he showed how hard it is to keep him down, showed how good he is at scrambling, strong top control himself, good ground and pound. And he's so mentally strong. I mean, you saw positions where Makhachev had his back and he didn't panic, found a way to get out, found a way to work back to his feet. As far as prediction, I know I've been talking a long time, but like, I feel honored to watch this fight. Like, and I feel lucky because to me, it's just such a fun time to be alive. I might be over exaggerating. Like I might, but to me, it's like two all-time greats battling for a second time. To me, I don't know if we'll. Yeah, I don't know what the results will be, and obviously it's hard to know how special something is until you or I'm trying to think. Like, there's moments in sports times where you don't realize how lucky you are until years later, when it wasn't the same anymore. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense.
Like,
yes.
I think about obviously I'm from New England. I grew up in. I root for all the New England teams. And I remember in 04, 03, 04, 05, where the Red Sox-Yankees rivalry seemed bigger than it ever was. To be in that time, I didn't realize how special it was because I kind of felt like it was going to be that forever. And there was peaks and valleys of that rivalry. But to me, I don't remember, and I'm sure somebody could say, Bucky dead in the 70s or something like that, maybe, but to me it was like, holy shit, how great was that like run? And I feel that way with this fight. Like, it feels like it could be an Ali Frazier, Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, because I think of these guys that good, where they could go down as all-time. I mean, Volkanovski to me already isn't all-time. Volkanovski might be the one guy to challenge Demetrius Johnson as the most talented guy I've seen. Now, there's guys better resumes, GSP and John Jones and us, but I mean, straight like eyeball test talent, it's like DJ and Volkanovski.
Guys that they are great at everything and they're bad at almost nothing.
Yeah, like just the perfect fighter.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I mean, my mind says Makhachev. My heart says Volkanovski. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not rooting for him, so I don't mean it like that, but I mean it more in the intangibles that go along with the fight. Now, I picked Makhachev last time, and I was right, and I scored it for him. He has the full camp. He's the bigger guy. He has the hometown. Abu Dhabi obviously is going to be pro Makhachev.
Yeah.
He's younger. Now, slightly, but he's younger. A question we have to ask is, I don't know who the official judges are for this, but like, what judges are scoring this, Everything points to this fight to be easier for Makhachev this time than the first time, based on, the full camp. But one thing I'll say about Volkanovski is that he's a master of game plans. I mean, he fought Makhachev's game in that fight and still almost won. There's a lot of people who believe he won. Mm-hmm. And people I respect who believe he won. Where, one round here was super close. I gave it to Makhachev, but if not, I think I scored 3-2. I think I don't remember the rounds in particular, but it was that close. There are certain men that are made to beat the odds. The guys that in the pressure moment, that's where they want to be. There's people who hide away from the pressure. There's guys, ninth inning, 2 outs. David Ortiz, he wants to be up. Yeah. Tom Brady wants the ball in his hands. Michael Phelps, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, like these guys, I think Alex Volkanovski's in that category. He's one of these guys where he's a guy that would take a fight against the seemingly impossible odds of an Islam Makhachev and take it on 10 days notice because, like, F you, I don't want to be else to have that category. I'm that guy. I love these odds. Like, I love being in this no one believes in me moment. I used to say that Randy Couture is my all-time favorite fighter when I was a fan of MMA and not doing the media side of it. Now, as a media member, I can't say I have favorites, so I won't say that I think Alex Volkanovski is my favorite fighter ever. Like, I'm not going to say that. I think he does it. I'm going to say Volkanovski wins by split decision.
And I love the breakdown there. Of the two of us, I picked Volkanovski in the first fight.
Yeah.
And I said, I know what a big ask this is. He's taking on another of the 3 or 4 most dominant fighters in the sport who is going to look 2 weight classes bigger than him and is good at things that should make him struggle. I understood what a big task it was that Volkanovski had taken on himself. And what I said at the time was, you give me any coaching staff on the entire planet, any MMA coaching staff on the entire planet, give them 4 months to come up with the perfect strategy to beat fighter X, name that fighter. It would be hard to do any better than Eugene Behrman and Joe Lopez, the two that run Alexander Volkanovski's training. And it would be hard to pick a fighter more likely to take their game plan and pursue it to perfection and at least give himself the best chance of winning that fight than Alexander Volkanovski. Here, obviously Volkanovski doesn't have 4 months to prepare for this. He has 10 days. But they don't have to go back and cover too much that they haven't covered. They scouted him exhaustively earlier this year, and unlike Volkanovski, Makhachev hasn't fought again since then, so they're in all the new tape. Any new tape that there is on Makhachev, Volkanovski was there for it. Stepping up on short notice, yeah, there's the question. He hadn't been preparing for a fight at all, but you know he's the kind of guy who's always in outstanding shape. He's a guy that cutting to 155 is presumably never much of an issue for him. So he's going to be close to his best self. Just as incredible as he is, he's human. And last time he fought an A fight, almost an A+. Makhachev fought an A- fight, maybe a B+, and it was enough for Makhachev to come out ahead. Those things would need to change for Volkanovski to get it done this time. Their first fight is at least on the fight of the year list. I think this one makes the fight of the year list as well. There's just no possibility this isn't a great fight. Even if Makhachev comes out and just really dominates and shows that if not the better fighter, he's at least the combination of bigger and better that's going to be enough to beat Volkanovski 9 times out of 10. Even if that happens, it's not like he's just going to run him over in the first round like he did, like Bobby Green or something. Likewise, if Volkanovski manages to do it and beat Makhachev and instantly put himself on the Mount Rushmore of the greatest fighters in MMA history, it's unlikely that it's just a round and a half washing. Whoever wins this is really, really going to have to put on the performance of his career to do it. Like Makhachev's win over Volkanovski was the best performance of his career. And if Volkanovski gets it done here, even with all the things he's already done, it'll be the best performance of his career. I mean, what does that tell you, man? Whoever wins this fight between 2 of the 5 best fighters in the sport right now, it's probably going to be the best performance of their career. I picked Volkanovski last time. I was wrong narrowly. I'm going with him again, man.
Wow. I think you were switching.
I'm not switching. I feel like in stick and ball sports, it's harder to beat the same opponent twice in rapid succession. It happens in college football all the time,
sure, yeah.
Where one team beats another team in conference play. They meet again 2.5 months later in their, conference playoff, and the team that lost knows exactly what they need to fix, and the team that won is just like, well, we got to do that again and hope it works out.
Well, think about basketball playoffs.
Yeah.
A team will win by 30 points and 2 days later to lose by 5.
Yeah. And maybe they lose the next 3 by 5 each.
Yeah.
So taken as a whole, they outscored the other team. But no, in MMA, I feel it's usually different. Like, barring something fluky, if one fighter beats another, it's easier for them to repeat. But here, I think we bucked the trend. I think we see Volkanovski win by decision in an all-time classic of a fight. And we have a new simultaneous 2-division champ. And we almost certainly have a trilogy fight early next year.
Yeah, I'll say this real quick, and I know we got to close up, but if Volkanovski wins, it'd probably be a close fight. I obviously, if I think Makhachev wins, it'd be a close fight. But if there's a blowout, it's probably Makhachev. Like, Volk the camp and everything, and he can't stop the wrestling, or he gets hurt with a big shot.
Yeah.
But I wonder, we've heard, obviously, I think generally speaking, having the camp is the advantage, but a lot of guys enjoy having the short camp and just kind of knocking off some dust because they think that, you don't suffer injuries, you're not grinding the mental battle of thinking about it for 4 months or whatever it is, instead of 10 days, and really you just kind of get to the weight cut and that's it. I also wonder when they won their fights, I could see Makhachev winning and now turning his focus to Charles Oliveira, to Justin Gaethje, to Mateusz Gamrot, to Conor, whoever. And obviously Volkanovski has fought since then. Yahya Rodriguez focused on him. But I still think there's a little bit of that, like, peeking over his shoulder, the
kind of like Rocky had the picture of Ivan Drago just stuck to the corner of his mirror.
Yeah, and Makhachev might not have. Like, he might have moved on, and I don't want to say it's a confidence boost or anything, because I don't think Volkanovski needs any more of confidence, or either one of these guys, really. But there's that guy in the wrestling tournament that everyone's chasing. He's not focusing on the rest of the field like the rest of the guys are.
No.
He's not filming the other guy wrestling, with the other guys filming him and studying his moves and studying his setups. And I'm so pumped for this fight, dude.
Same here. The only hope I have is that the fight makes it to the cage intact, and that whoever wins, it's because they were the better fighter. Like, we don't see this thing where Makhachev passes out on the scale, and if the fight was in the U.S., it probably would have been, like, canceled or something. Like, I just want both these guys to fight as best they can, and who wins.
Yeah. Before we forget, can I just say this? So we just talked for like over 3 hours.
Yep.
If you listen this far, can you at least give us a like? Like, give us like, we'll have thousands of views on this, and we'll have like 1% of likes. So please do us a favor, at least hit like, get these views up even higher. It really helps. It'll take you about 1.5 seconds to do that. At least do that for us. Maybe throw a comment in there too.
Yeah, there you go. This has been the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 294, Makhachev versus Volkanovski 2, which takes place this Saturday, early in the day for you North America, Western Hemisphere folks. It is, of course, at Yas Island, Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. I've been Ben Duffy. He has been Keith Shillan. If this is your first time watching or listening to one of our previews, thank you. This one ran a little longer than most just because there was so much to talk about, and we still managed to get sidetracked a few times. But please do like, subscribe, drop us a comment. Keith and I both man the comment section. We'd love to hear your take on these fights. But join us for the recap. We are live on the Sherdog YouTube page, usually about 15 minutes after the main event, sometimes only 10. We will talk about all 13 of these fights in reverse order, going from this all-timer of a headliner all the way down to the debut of Shara Bullet in the curtain jerker. We will talk about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was controversial. There's always something. We will talk about what's next for the notable winners as well as losers, and we will talk with you. The live chat on the YouTube page is open that whole time. So we are taking your questions, your comments, and your hot takes in real time. We have a growing community of friends that hang out with us after the fights, and we would love you to be part of it. Between now and then, enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks for listening, and by all means, enjoy these fights.